This is kind of a dark topic, but you know the guy who attacked Paul Pelosi?
Oh, God. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the latest thing on him?
No. What's the hot news, Brian?
He has been in this country illegally, apparently, for a very long time because he's Canadian.
Oh, so he's a undocumented Canadian immigrant?
He's Canadian. This whole time.
Maybe we should build a wall.
I've been saying this.
It was a joke.
I mean, that's the thing is, it's like it's in their nature, right? They come, they see a bunch of land that's already occupied, and they say, that's ours.
Acquisitive,
I know that because we're the same way.
Naturally acquisitive Canadians with their perverse nature.
Jesus Christ.
So many possible worlds.
I'm not wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. No.
Smuggling hammers into our country.
We can't lose the Canadian market. We've lost so many markets.
Yes, we can. There's like 12 of them.
I feel like, though, that's a little bit like time.
It's like Lucy Maud Montgomery and like 5 other people. Who cares?
So many possible worlds, but we got...
Who's Lucy Maud Montgomery?
How dare you? How dare you? The author of Anne of Green Gables?
Oh, right. I should know that. I've been to Prince Edward Island. April, have you ever been to Canada?
That's the thing they throw at you when you get to Prince Edward Island. They just throw a copy of Anne of Green Gables at your face.
I have been to Canada, but I was 6, so minimal memories.
What'd you do?
Oh, my dad was preaching at a church. I'm sure it was lovely, and nothing traumatic happened there. So.
Oh, that's great.
No hammer attacks.
It was weird. When your dad was preaching, there was a guy at the back just like sharpening a hammer, saying, "I'm just sneak into the States."
Sharpening.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast willing to keep its hammers sharp and ready. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And joining us today, we have a fantastic guest. I always say fantastic guest, but it really is true.
You pick fantastic guests, Josh.
Thank you, Brian.
You're just good at this.
Thank you. She's a content creator. She's got a great channel on TikTok, all about like evangelicalism, ex-evangelical, unpacking your history, and she co-hosts a podcast, the delightful April Ajoy. Hello, April.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Before we get like into today's subject matter, which is going to be even more adventures in Odyssey.
Woo!
But yeah, April, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you focus on in your podcast?
I grew up a preacher's kid, very much into the evangelical world. I was also an evangelist kid. So my dad was an evangelist and my grandfather was a pastor. And then my dad became a pastor.
Oh, wow.
So I had the best of or worst of both worlds, depending how you look at it.
I mean, you know what we would say, but
Yes.
The worst of all possible.
Yeah, so grew up through all the things, purity culture, nationalism, probably like my peak evangelical moment was when I sang an original song called America Say Jesus on the Jim Bakker show. When I was 18.
Whoa!
Yeah, that
is
just
the
gives
pure
you a clue.
uncut stuff. Oh my God.
Well, if you go into the depths of my TikTok, I actually share a clip from the show because I still have it.
Hell yes.
Right.
But it's like, America say Jesus, he makes our nation free. Jesus gives us life and liberty.
Oh my God.
I know.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good.
It's like a little bit jingly, so it gets stuck in your head, but the lyrics are so cringe. I need to
They
rewrite
should
it.
have given the Statue of Liberty the face of Jesus. That would have changed everything.
What would that have done, Brian? Can you expand on that a
would
little
have
bit?
shown that Jesus would give us liberty, first of all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And other things. I just want it, okay? Sometimes I just want things.
Do you know how hard it is to render a beard in copper?
They did it for Abraham Lincoln many times.
I guess that's true.
I actually prefer the idea of it just being like a face in whole thing where it's like just the Statue of Liberty, same as, but then you just, in the place where you would have her face, you just put like white Jesus in there. I think that would be really
You could like you could switch it out every now and then. You could replace it with Ronald Reagan.
Anyway, April, back to your story. You grew up in that world. Hardcore. I know you phone banked for 700 Club, right?
Yeah, well, I was a producer for the 700 Club. And
you're a producer.
Guilty. But I did like I would go and interview people for like the testimonial section of the show, but they required you to volunteer. So it wasn't really volunteering to do the phone banks.
Right.
Okay.
I had just started working there, and you can be on the set. Like they put certain people on the set, and I didn't know. So they're like, do you want to be on set? I was like, sure. So I literally am on TV answering a call when this atheist called in and was like, cussing me out for just
Can you see it on your face, or were you doing a good job?
Literally, I saw the red light go on while this dude's like, fuck you. And I'm like, you can see it on my face, just like, I was not trained for this.
Can I ask, and I feel free to completely disregard this, but I've always been fascinated by like the finances behind like stuff like this, like the 700 Club. Was it a well-paying gig, or was it like...
No, I actually took a pay cut to work there because I was working in the corporate world.
Right.
And then they offered me a job. It was a slight pay cut, but I was like, I'm doing it for Jesus.
Well, that's a wage dynamic that I think all three of us are familiar with. We call it the American theater.
Yes. Actually, this will be a very relevant topic as we get into this first episode.
As a result of this, you also do like a podcast where you talk about like this stuff. And before we jump into our episode, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Sure. So in the height of the pandemic, I met a couple other pastors on TikTok, and we started talking like, hey, we should do something. So we started a podcast called Evangelicalish. And it's funny, if you listen to the early episodes, we were still kind of hanging on to being evangelical. We're like, we're going to change it from within. And then at some point, like somewhere in that first year, we were like, screw it. We are not evangelicals anymore. We are done. But we still have the name. But yeah, so we every week we record the show live on YouTube. So we live stream it on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll do topical stuff. Like we did a show on hell a couple weeks ago. And then we bring in guests. And we had Kevin Max from DC Talk on.
I saw that
a month ago.
Josh just messaged me about that a couple nights ago. And he's like, whoa.
I was like, oh my God, the third most famous person from my hometown went on that podcast. It's literally the top three are former President Gerald Ford, Red Hot Chili Peppers lead singer Anthony Kiedis, and then number 3, fucking Kevin Max of DC Talk.
Number 4, Josh Borman.
That's right.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yes.
Grand Rapids,
Love
represent.
That.
It's a good show. It's a very good show. I don't think the idea of doing something live and not cutting it after the fact is horrifying to me.
I'm having anxiety just thinking about it.
Yeah, you're all like pastors, so like you all are just good at getting up there, doing it live.
Right.
I mean, there's definitely been some bloopery things, but yeah.
That
comes with the territory.
The nature of live entertainment, right? And I think many of our listeners come from evangelical backgrounds, and I think for those listeners especially, they will find a lot to chew on in your show.
Absolutely. And April, what is your experience with Adventures in Odyssey? Is this something that you also grew up with?
Yes, it is. I listened to the audiobooks because I'm pretty sure they used to put them in Chick-fil-A kids meals.
They did,
the sampler tapes,
So we'd have
instead
those.
of toys, they would include a tape of Adventures in Odyssey.
It's what every kid wants.
Wasn't there an Adventures in Odyssey cartoon?
Yeah, they made quite a few videos over time. They were very expensive. I don't think they really ever made their budget back on those the way they did with the radio show.
Yeah, Brian has described it for me, and it sounds like a real nightmare. Actually, for like the people making it, which is wild because it's only ever a nightmare for me listening to
coming back to the show and listening to a lot of episodes that are actually around the time span of the episodes we're listening to today. There are a lot of little jokes and jabs that they get in on like the cartoon and on the making of the cartoon.
Oh, so
really
you're like some internecine sort of like...
Yeah, I think they were grumpy.
Yeah.
I think I had blocked this out because when I was listening to the episodes for this, like I remembered listening to it and watching it very vaguely.
Right.
But it was like triggering the little door.
Oh no!
When they opened the door, there was something.
The Whit's End, the little doorbell thing, the chime, and
that was so. It was suddenly so familiar, and I don't know why it was triggering, but I was suddenly like a kid again in an evangelical household, like listening to this. It's funny because I don't actually have like specific memories of listening to it.
Well, you do now.
Yeah, it's all coming back to me now.
Oh my
God! There were
God!
moments of gold. There were flashes of wit.
Thank you, Jim Steinman. So, yeah, we might as well get into it and talk about our first episode on the list this week. This is episode 154, Coming of Age.
I've been coming of age and I've been doing just
Damn
fine.
it, AJ.
Yeah, so this is a Phil Lawler episode, of course, our boy. Not our boy. He's not our boy. Paul McCusker is our boy.
Yeah, Paul McCusker is our lad, our mad lad.
And this came out in May of 1991. So we're pretty healthily along. Jimmy Barkley and the whole Barkley family have appeared in a number of episodes. This one starts with Jimmy writing in his journal, which is a throwback to the very first time the Barkleys appeared in Family Vacation in like the second year of Adventures in Odyssey. And this was supposed to be his send-off. This was planned to be the final episode for Jimmy Barkley for reasons that we'll get into in a little bit. But as I said, they decided to bring back the journal in a way of bookending the story
saga
of Jimmy Barkley.
One, I've decided I'm going to be a great actor when I grow up, and all great actors should keep journals. And two, a lot of strange things have been happening to me lately, and you're the only one I can really tell them to.
Strange things are happening to him.
Such as
strange things.
He is more irritated by his sister. He's finding it really hard to be around dear old dad. Dad is starting to become cringe.
Yeah, I think this is a decently well acted scene here with Chuck Bolte as George Barkley.
So, what movie you guys gonna see?
Don't worry, Dad. It's rated G. I remember the rules.
Oh boy.
I just thought that if it's a good one, I might watch it with you.
You mean today?
Sure. Hey, there are the guys. Come on.
Dad!
What? What's the matter?
You're not gonna walk up with me there, are you?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause you
based,
can't.
Jimmy. I'm not cringe.
Because my friends are there.
That's all right, Jimmy. I know all your friends. We've done this 100 times before. Remember the time?
Dad! I don't want you to go.
Well, I really wasn't in the mood for a movie today anyway. I think I'll just walk around the mall for a little while.
Damn.
It's a pretty real moment.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I think it's this is written decently enough and performed decently enough that it's like, oh yeah, this is a very real thing that happens.
Yeah, and it's also like it really makes you on George Barkley's side, which is an amazing with the arc that we get with these 3 episodes specifically.
Right.
Because you really feel for this guy. Like, it is a very real experience. But also, your kid is hitting puberty and he can't see a PG movie. That's a lot of the Disney canon, man. Like, come on.
I was allowed to watch G and PG.
Okay.
It was more depending on what the PG movie was. Once I got older, I could do PG-13. I think the first PG-13 movie I was allowed to watch was Bean, the Mr. Bean movie.
Yeah,
You just call Bean?
I think it's just called Bean.
It's a dark, gritty Mr. Bean reboot.
Yeah, I don't remember why it was PG-13.
I don't either.
I guess there
but
was some butt humor or something. I don't know.
probably.
Sure.
We watched a lot of the Mr. Bean sketches, so
Right.
they were like, we can make an exception for this.
It's okay if it's a little rude because it's British.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally different. We can separate it.
It was interesting, too, because, like, I know in the 80s that PG meant a very different thing than it did in, like, the 90s, you know? Like, so...
Yeah, but that was like early 80s because after Temple of Doom, they brought in the PG-13 rating. 'Cause
Right.
Temple of Doom famously got a PG rating with all of the hearts getting pulled out of chests and everything.
Yeah, and this episode is what? This episode of Odyssey is 91. Yeah.
So
yeah.
at this point, kids who aren't able to see PG movies are definitely in the weird camp. Right.
I mean, which is, I don't understand how they could be doing this because the Barkleys are a very normal family. There's nothing weird about this family.
The most normal family in the world. Yeah.
Not a thing wrong with the Barkleys.
And that's really why, I guess, Jimmy, being normal and growing up in a normal family, is concerned about something that's going on with him, which he considers very abnormal. You know, his voice is starting to crack. And this was something, as you said, Brian, that they wrote into the script because the voice actor for Jimmy was going through puberty.
So David Griffin and where I'm getting most of this information, there actually is some supplemental stuff from Adventures in Odyssey itself, but I just want to point people to episode 49 of the podcast Growing Up Christian. They do a very long interview with David Griffin, and this was just a couple of years ago. where he goes into his whole history of playing Jimmy Barkley and working on Adventures in Odyssey and everything that went along and followed. So stop this podcast, play a different podcast,
do that.
and
Only
then come
listen
back.
to us.
And Evangelicalish, you have two options.
That's
It's
right.
us
That's
or it's
right.
Evangelicalish. No other podcast exists.
Yeah, David was hired particularly because he had a very high voice, right? If you listen to Castles and Cauldrons and all that stuff, he has a really high voice.
My teacher, Mrs. Adams, asked us all to start a diary so we could write down everything fun we do this summer. I think writing a diary is for girls, so I decided to write a journal instead.
And when a boy's voice changes and they're working on Adventures in Odyssey, it's time to, throw them in the Soylent Green factory and grind them up.
No, they go through the no-no door.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah.
They are gone forever. In most cases, sometimes they do come back. You'll see Jack Davis in the third episode of this collection that we've featured here today. Mm-hmm. But it was like a done thing. And the way that David describes it is that they were doing an episode and his voice had been changing. And so he just kept sort of getting into that higher register as he would work. And then one day he was supposed to shout something and his voice cracked and there was just a long silence and he just saw the producers behind the glass like whispering to each other. Then they'd like turn the God mic on, almost say something and then let go and then whisper something else and then turn it on again. One of the producers described it as like he called Paul McCusker, because Paul McCusker at this point was already living in England, and just said, "So David Griffin's voice has changed. I know you're writing some episodes for Jimmy, but anyway, you just might want to pray about that."
Oh my gosh.
Pray about it? For what? Did he start taking hormone blockers? Like what's the outcome that he's looking for here?
But like David Griffin was such a good actor as far as the talent that they were getting for the show that they ended up keeping him on, and about a year later, they write him back into the show. They bring the Barkleys back, and then they have a whole. He's in another like 30 episodes almost after that.
But I imagine that whole like something potentially difficult is happening for the show. You need to pray for this. Like you need to pray for his voice to stop changing. Like
I don't.
At the same time, April,
I
I imagine that like that whole mentality is something that is pretty familiar to you, right? Like,
oh yeah. Like, I mean, I knew people that would take it as extreme where they would ask God every morning what they should wear that day.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Would he respond? What? How did they end up determining their outfit? Like what was the deciding factor?
I don't know. They probably just had a feeling. They're like, that's
sure,
God. That's definitely God telling me to wear the suit today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We see a parallel to this because now all of a sudden Jimmy wants to be an actor. This is not an arc that goes anywhere. Also, Jack wanted to be an actor in the episode where Edwin Blackard showed up.
Right.
That's all right. But we have Jimmy doing this Romeo and Juliet balcony scene that he actually did before. We will get to that episode in sometime down the road in our episode about grief. But he has done the balcony scene before. It was a big hit. Everyone laughed. And so Jimmy is doing it again.
Mr. Whitaker, I just had this weird throat cold. I'm sure it'll clear up before the performance.
Well, that's doubtful, Jimmy, and I think we both know you have more than a little cold.
We do?
Well, for what it's worth, I thought it was cute.
We don't want cute, Connie. We want funny.
He was laughing.
Not that type of funny. We want the audience laughing with us, not at us.
But I don't mind, Mr. Whitaker. Really, I don't.
Well, I'm sorry, Jimmy, but I'm afraid we're going to have to get another Juliet.
Oh, man.
Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be in the show, though.
As what? A stagehand?
I was thinking more along the lines of Romeo.
Romeo?
Hey, that's a great idea. You'd make an excellent Romeo, Jimmy.
This is so
It's
weird.
not as fun as Juliet.
Well, maybe not, but it's equally challenging in other ways.
Woke John Avery Whitaker is trying to get our kids into drag brunches.
Yeah, what is this?
I had to rewind this to be like, wait,
Yeah.
he was playing Juliet? I was like, wow, they're
And
progressive.
then he actively wants to, and I think that's very interesting. But it is like, but then Whit's like, no, you have to be Juliet because it's funny when men in dress. That what funny thing is.
And
Right.
that was the plot of the whole thing before. Is it's like, well, they do drag like they did in Shakespeare's day, but then it's the crowd laughs, and that's the whole thing, which is like something that I did a ton of as a performer, as a child in a like choir and things like that. There would always be some sort of gag where one of us would get into some kind of dress or
Yeah,
something.
boy
Like,
walks out in a dress, yeah.
this is not unusual. They're just pretending it's unusual now because it's their way of being fascists, right? Like here you can see this example where no one thinks this is weird from a fucking James Dobson radio show.
Well, it is weird, but like not for the reasons that they think. Like because Whit is he's
cold as ice.
Oh my God, ice cold dog. He's imperious. He's basically the Josh Borman of this world. He has the same exacting standards for his plays that I have for this podcast.
This is going to come back to haunt you, Josh.
It's like when you recast the old host of this show and replaced him with me.
Exactly, we all remember
Ryan Balfour.
Ryan Balfour. Yeah.
How many people go to these shows? Like, how big is this little auditorium where they're putting these on anyway?
That's
Isn't this like a
question.
cafe?
What do you think? Because I don't think it's canon.
Yeah.
It's like they call it the Little Theater.
The Little Theater, yeah.
Is it just like in the kitchen? Or where is it?
Well, because I had the Wits End board game, so there's a big layout of Wits End.
Oh, is it like Clue, where it's like the whole board game is the...
it's kind of like that. It's not the same mechanics, but yeah, you do just sort of walk around between rooms, and then once you get to each room, there's a different activity. So there's like a Pictionary thing or charades. Charades was what you did with the Little Theater.
Right.
And no, it's just like they just have a whole auditorium set up.
Yeah,
what maybe a 99-seat storefront theater?
Sure.
I don't know what their equity is.
They're on a mini contract. It's a 99-seat theater.
I mean, they sound like they have a balcony.
Right.
In the scene. Yeah. So it's got to be big enough to have a set of some sort and a stage. So, I mean, I was picturing like a little black box, but I don't know how that's attached to like a little
ice cream shop.
Yeah.
Right. Or how they fit a full-size, presumably fly loft into a 99-seat theater. That's also unclear.
And also, what was the plan here? Because Whit's just like, you're going to play Romeo, but was the original plan that Whit was going to play Romeo?
Yeah, who was going to be Romeo?
He was reading the Romeo lines. No, that's super weird.
Was it going to be Whit as now we're inching into groomer territory here, and I have concerns.
Wait, are you saying there's some groomer territory in these first 3 episodes that we're listening to today? I am shocked, Josh. How dare you accuse the pillar of like decency in the town of Odyssey of finding little girls and boys attractive? There's no text in these episodes that would prove otherwise, is there?
Oh, God. But yeah, like the thing that's going on for Jimmy at this point, he's got sort of this inner struggle going on because not only
every young man's battle,
he's fighting every young man's battle, right?
Yeah.
Because not only is he having trouble with his voice, he's also started to notice girls, specifically Connie. He's developed a bit of feelings for Connie. He's written about it in his journal. And then Whit gives a direction to Connie. Because he wants Connie to read Juliet, and I heard this and I was concerned.
Work him hard, Connie. Remember, believability is the key.
Believability.
Work him hard, Connie.
That is a great wit, April.
That's a really good wit.
Thank you.
And Jimmy has really opined at this point about how much he loves Connie, and this does nothing to help his feelings, right?
No.
He's down bad by the end.
He's down so bad,
scene.
Dude.
Yeah, and horrendous.
Down for Connie, the young Josh Borman story.
Yeah.
So
Josh had a very huge crush on Connie when he was a kid.
I had a moderate crush on Connie that
just from listening or the cartoon?
Yeah, no, from listening.
Just her voice.
She's not very hot in the cartoon, to be honest. No, it's more like,
it was the idea of Connie.
It was the concept of Connie. That's exactly right.
Cartoon Connie is mid, actually.
He writes in his journal a lot, and there's this little shit Artie who keeps like looking over his shoulder.
Yeah.
And
I did
all
not
this
grab
stuff.
clips of Artie for a reason.
Yeah.
That was like, this show can be annoying. This character was way too annoying.
Yeah.
Artie is a minor character who appeared in like 4 or 5 episodes. He's just like that weird kid who has 7 siblings, and that's his arc.
It just felt like a side story that didn't do anything. It was kind of pointless.
We go to the commercial, of course, and when we come back, we get this amazing cue.
And now, back to the adventure.
It's so
triggering. Triggering is what that is.
I'm so sorry.
Wait, can you elaborate? Can you elaborate specifically on what was triggering about that moment? Just how delightful the music was?
I was just remembering all of these. It was just a flashback to childhood of like not being allowed
standing
to
up
do
on the
stuff.
back of your neck.
Yeah, like my parents were pretty strict on me too, and I was like, to go back there would be awful.
Yeah, we are here to re-traumatize. That is our goal.
Wonderful.
At the beginning of this one too, Chris was like, Jimmy's been on a lot of adventures. Today he's going to go on an adventure that there's no return.
Yeah,
Jimmy is becoming awake to the ravages of time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff in this episode. Like his sister Donna catches him shaving at one point, and she's like, "There's no hair on your lip," and he's like, "Have you felt my upper lip lately?" And I was like, "I hope not."
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
Like that's a regular thing. Filling each other's lips. That's totally normal.
Normal thing you do with your
do
siblings.
I have a mustache today? Come feel my upper lip with your lip. It's like, is this finally the incest episode of Odyssey that we've all been waiting for?
Hold on. That we've all been waiting for?
Yes, we collectively, everyone in this. I am not tracking down with me. No one's been waiting for this.
I'm not going to dig into that further. So, Whit has now at this point, Connie has worked Jimmy hard. And she has done this by really throwing there we go. By really throwing it all into the Juliet, wherefore art thou Romeo monologue, which by the way, just a note, she says, wherefore art thou, Romeo. That is not what it is. It's why are you Romeo? It should be wherefore art thou Romeo rather than wherefore art thou, Romeo. That's neither here nor there. Point is,
Adventures in Odyssey, obey the iambic pentameter.
You need to understand Shakespeare. But the main point here is that Jimmy's got the feels. Jimmy's got the feels. He is completely in love with Connie. He's writing his journal again, fantasizing about going to a theme park with her. And then Artie, this fucking asshole little kid, shows back up again. Just continuing.
Again, I did not clip.
Oh, he's so annoying. He's reading Jimmy's.
Yeah, he's also just like mean.
Yeah.
He's a shitty, awful little child. He was probably just like me at that point, but like that's whatever.
And Whit then decides, because Jimmy is going to be Romeo, we should cast Artie as Juliet.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, Whit, what is Whit's game here? Like, what are you trying to do, Whit? What's going on?
I think
this Machiavellian plan of yours.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to give Whit the benefit of the doubt and assume that Artie came up to him and was just like, give me the role, give me the role, give me the role. And Whit was just like, fine, take it. I don't care. Just be Romeo. I don't care.
Yeah.
It is funny because I really found Artie to be so horrifically annoying until a moment when like Jimmy like storms off and Artie's just like, I just wanted to hang out with you or something like that. Like they have this one line. It's just like, he just wants validation. He just wants someone to tell him he's good. And so,
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. April, what do you think drives Artie? This is Artie chat. We're pivoting to Artie chat now.
It's Artie chat.
I don't want to do Artie chat.
Too bad. We're doing it.
God damn it.
What do I think drives him? I think he probably deep down is questioning his beliefs in Christianity. And it's coming out. It's projecting as just being an annoying little kid. Is this real?
Right.
Artie's definitely ex-evangelical by the time he reaches adulthood.
Yeah.
Artie,
And
come on our podcast.
he has a podcast where he's like, yeah, I had 7 siblings.
Right.
And there was this old man who would always put me in drag.
Totally normal.
Yeah. He kept saying, if we don't work you hard, we're not working.
very pro child labor. Yeah.
With distance and by deconstructing my relationship with Whit's End, I have now come to a better understanding of who I am.
Yeah.
So Jimmy storms off. He leaves his journal behind. Connie finds it, but then she just sort of puts it away for when Jimmy comes back. Jimmy's on his way out and he's like walking and he's like, oh no, my journal. Oh no.
Right.
Yep.
And he storms back and Connie, anyway, here we go.
Oh, his counter's a mess. Oh, hi, Jimmy.
You didn't happen to see a notebook laying right here, did you?
As a matter of fact, I did.
Oh, great, Connie, I'm
boy.
sorry.
Sorry?
Yes, I didn't want you to find out how I feel about you by reading it in my journal. I wanted to tell you that that I love you. In person.
Whoa. What a swing.
Well, Jimmy, I think you just did.
What do you mean?
Well, I put a notebook of yours in the back room, but I didn't know it was your journal.
What I find more interesting about this than like what actually happens here, this back and forth, is what happens next, because Whit shows up.
He jump scared me.
He jumps.
Whit legitimately jump scared me.
John Avery Whitaker jump scare.
Because there's so much cringe in this moment. Like, I actually found this to be very effective. Like, just the idea of...
Oh, yeah.
Like, the performances are so good, and that astronomical pause between I love you and then Connie saying... I think you just did is like it's devastating. And I don't know when Whit enters, but it seems like he just kind of appears behind Connie. Is like, well, that didn't go great. And she's like, oh, God. Like, it's...
Sidled her.
Get out of here, Whit. Yeah,
Whit,
exactly.
But yeah, and there's something, too, about like, there is a story that I'm deeply embarrassed of involving, and I blocked this out until somebody, the girl told me about this, that apparently at one point I just spontaneously straight up told a girl that I loved her when I was like 16. She was like, okay. Because like, this is what you do when you're an adolescent. You don't understand these emotions. A lot of it is very overwhelming. But here's what happens next that I think is so interesting. Whit comes in and jump scares everybody. Connie says that she should go talk to Jimmy. She's like, I could go hash it out. And Whit's like, no, I have to do this. And
that was weird.
It was weird, right?
Yeah.
Why is this your business, middle-aged man?
Yes.
Would not the healthy thing be for the two of them to hash it out? That way, Connie can articulate what her feelings are and maybe let Jimmy down a little easy. They don't have to have this weird fucking dynamic, and maybe this is a reach, and I'd be curious to hear what you hear, April, but like, my thought was this is being like, well, young women can't be trusted with matters like this.
In some ways, I actually took it more as an adult in those Christian circles, having control over kids,
right,
and wanting to control the narrative and to control what's happening and not let them figure it out for themselves, like making sure that the input from the proper Christian adult is being inserted, where instead of just letting kids figure it out, like most kids do.
And that's something that you talk about a fair bit, right? Like with your, I've heard you talk about some of this stuff on your podcast and some of the content you create as well.
Yeah,
right?
I think, like indoctrination, whether people realize they're doing it or not, they are making sure that kids know what the Christian belief is, and by Christian, I mean their very narrow, white, evangelical Christian ideas of it. But yeah, it's like, oh, you're feeling this way? Well, here's how you should think about this. So, they tell kids what to think instead of how to think.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say like the proper Christian adult, because to me, the proper Christian adult in this situation is George Barkley, is the kid's dad. Why is this random owner of a soda shop climbing up a tree?
Well, so AJ, your first mistake is that you focused on the family.
That's what I was told to do. That's what they told me to do.
That's level 1, man. You got to read between the lines. Yeah, so Whit goes over to this treehouse. This is the Wonderworld treehouse, which is a thing for some reason. There are a lot of episodes involving this treehouse that I have spared you from, AJ.
She wonder on my world until I treehouse. Is this anything?
I mean,
what?
Yeah. So Jimmy's up there. Whit climbs up to talk to him.
Well, this place looks pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I hope it holds up, because it's where I'm going to spend the rest of my life.
Oh, Jimmy. I know you're not going to believe me, but things really aren't as bad as you think they are.
I don't know how they could get any worse. I'm fighting with my sister all the time. I can't really talk to my parents. My body is a wreck. I can't seem to think straight. I got mad at you, and I just made an idiot of myself in front of... Well, I'm sure she told you about it. I've never had problems like this before, Mr. Whitaker. I've never had feelings like this. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I'm going crazy.
Well, most people your age think that. Take it from me, Jimmy. But
Shut
you're
the
not
fuck
going
up.
crazy. You see, you are going through adolescence, or At least you're starting to.
What's adolescence?
Well, you're
It's a
preparing
fancy
for
word
it.
for growing up.
Yeah.
You see, God has planted this little organ in your brain called a pituitary gland. And he's locked up inside it all the changes you're going through now and all the changes you ever will go through.
Stop.
Well, right now, your pituitary gland is telling the other glands in your body that it's time to grow up.
Nope. No.
I love to talk to my glands.
It's such a strange. I remember as a kid being like, I don't know. I've learned what a pituitary gland is. Cool.
Yeah, and the way
it's
that
such a strange piece of writing.
Yeah, and Whit goes on and frames it up that like all of the changes you're about to go through in adolescence are locked up in your pituitary gland, which I guess. First of all, bad news for Andy Milonakis, I guess. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Secondly, that's not biology. Like, what are you talking about?
It's interesting because it's almost like they were testing words that they were allowed to use, and hormones didn't get out of the gate. They couldn't say hormones.
Sure.
But they could say glands.
Which is an infinitely worse word. Glands is infinitely worse than hormones.
April, what were your thoughts on this conversation in the treehouse between a 13-year-old boy and a 60-year-old man?
I mean, Hal Smith himself was in his 70s by this point.
So older than middle-aged. I thought it was weird. First, I always cringe anytime they're like, oh, this is God's will, and because blah, 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 like just bringing God into every
God's
normal
gland.
thing. Right. Like atheist kids also go through puberty and they're not oh, it's God. I did appreciate the attempt at science, how bad it was, nevertheless. Yeah. It's like, okay. But yeah, I just thought, and he was like, oh, well, every child goes through this. Take it from me. I'm like, you're so old. Why should he take this from you? It's been like a century since you
came
were
of
here.
age in the 1910s. What the fuck?
When you were going through puberty, everyone was still eating hardtack. It's just that like Whit has to do it because that's what Whit does. But there is also an expectation in the real world, in like church scenarios, that like, well, sometimes parents are not going to be preparing their children at all for something that that like Jimmy is well underway here. George should have taken him aside and been like, hey, here's a razor. Like, you know, maybe start wearing deodorant. Your voice is changing because you're on your way to adulthood. Notice how I have a low voice and you're getting there, boy. Like anything at all. And he's like in the thick of this and just like, I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, I didn't even know like what a period was until it happened to me because people just didn't talk to me about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also felt like in this conversation too, which is such a huge problem, I think, just with evangelical culture in general, is just the lack of empathy for what's going on. It's more of like, oh, you'll get through this. Everybody goes through this. You know, you'll be fine. Just give it to God, instead of being like, hey, Jimmy, that really sucks. You know, and just sitting there with what Jimmy's going through, because it is hard growing up, instead of, you know, trying to fix it. Be like, oh, you know, you just got to get over it. Don't be sad. It's fine. Instead of just being like, hey, your feelings are valid.
Yeah, because his feelings for Connie are real. He's known her a long time. She's cool. She's nice with it.
There seems to be
low-key nice with it. Yeah.
Yeah. There seems to be at least something with the Romeo and Juliet scene. Like there's a little bit of like chemistry there.
The way that it's played, they absolutely have a moment. Like we didn't play the clip, but like there's a moment where Juliet, where Connie as Juliet finishes the line, and again, there's something about the performance, the timing of it. In your mind's eye, you can see them sort of looking at each other and having that moment where they like actually make eye contact and are like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. And that could have been something fun to play with. But again, this show doesn't do nuance. And so they just throw all of that out the window.
Especially Phil Lawler as a writer.
And Connie's feelings don't really exist after this point. Like it doesn't matter what their relationship is going forward. And that is something that actually does matter. What happens when you just blurt some shit out like that?
April, did you ever have an experience like that? Did you ever just blurt out feelings and then run away from somebody?
Kind of, like in reverse though.
Oh.
It was someone
okay.
who blurted out feelings for me.
Oh shit.
I was 13 and I was like, this guy that I liked, I wanted to be his Valentine because Valentine's Day was coming up. And this was at church. Like we were both like leaders in the kids' church because we had like aged out. And he came up to me after kids' church and was like, "Hey, April, do you have a Valentine?" I was like, "No." And like my heart's pounding. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's happening." And then he goes, "Well, would you want to be mine?" And I don't know what came over me, but I went, "Yeah." And then I walked off. Oh no. It was awful. And I wanted to say yes. And I just laughed it off like he was an idiot. And I walked away and he looked so sad. And I was like, what did I do? What did I do? Why did I do that?
Wow.
Yeah, it was so weird. I have no idea what came over me. It's the first time any guy had ever like that I liked asked me something and I totally panicked.
But of course, because you don't have a framework in your brain yet to process those feelings and like how to translate them into communication.
Yeah, and you don't want to embarrass yourself, so then you do something that is somehow like more embarrassing and confusing.
So bad.
Right.
So bad. Totally rejected him. I still honestly cringe to this day. I'm like, gosh, I wish I could go back and be like, yes, I would like to do that. And I was like, you're stupid.
Well, good news, April. He's right here.
Is that our fourth consecutive episode we've made that joke now? I love it.
It's not going to get old. We're going to do it every time now.
Every single time.
But yeah, I mean, this episode then basically wraps up with, again, Whit just sort of doing what is more or less Dobson's preparing for adolescence speech.
Yes, which I don't know, April, if you listen to this, but I think there was also a book, but I listened to the audio book of Preparing for Adolescence by James Dobson, which was also my sex talk.
Lovely.
I got to hear James Dobson explain sex to me.
How does James Dobson explain sex?
Very carefully.
Very, very straightforward, actually, very factually, which is just...
which is surprising, actually.
Yeah. I think even this, like, God put the pituitary gland in you, that might also come from Preparing for Adolescence. This is another one of those things where it's like, well, we might as well hit this since this is one of the books that James is selling.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wow.
They're nothing if not good at synergy, brand synergy.
When I'm learning like basic facts about my biology, I do like to be sold products. I think that's sort of like the ideal way to learn. What is the sex talk like in evangelical circles? Is it just passing off like information like, you know, the Dobson thing for Brian, or like do your parents sit you down and are like, here's like the basic things that are going to happen to you? Like what is that process like?
I guess it depends on who you ask.
Right.
I learned everything about sex from chat rooms.
Okay.
Like fucking Yahoo chat and shit like that, you mean?
It was actually like a WWJD chat room.
Oh,
way
even
spicy in there.
Let's go.
Boy.
Yeah. So I was like
boy.
curious because my parents hadn't told me yet. I was like 10, 11. And I was like, I need to know this. And I didn't know I just didn't know. So that's how I learned. But then my mom did sit me down because she didn't know that I had learned all this in chat rooms. And my mom actually told me it was like my dad took my brothers, I had two brothers, and he told them, you know, the talk. And then my mom told me, and me and my brothers compared notes afterwards. And I knew what was actually sex because chat rooms.
Because the chat rooms.
Yeah. And so my mom told me correctly. My dad told my brothers, because my brothers told me what he said, he's like, hey, you know, when you get married and you want to have kids, moms and dads get in a bed together and they get naked and they play with each other.
They do. They do that.
That was the talk, though.
That was it?
That was it. Naked in a bed, play with each other.
Like Yahtzee?
Not
I don't know.
unlike
That was
Yahtzee.
what my brothers do. And I was like, Dad fell a little short for you guys there.
Oh, that's funny.
My God. Wow.
Yeah, the Dobson thing is like penis, vagina, semen, sort of end of story. He does a bit about like physical changes and like hair growing and sore breasts, which can also happen in men as well, even if they're not growing breasts, that happens, and things like that. But of course, he focuses mainly on psychology and on feelings and belonging because he was a psychologist. And he reassures you that you will not be gay because people only choose to be gay.
Right.
Oh,
Right. Which puts him at odds with every young man's battle.
Yeah. Is that why Jimmy's chest hurts in this one? I actually did have a question about that because he was complaining about his chest.
Dobson focused on that quite a bit. Yeah. So, or maybe Jimmy has gynecomastia. Who knows?
Josh, how did you learn about the old slappy slappy?
I mean, it was...
The old what?
Don't worry about it. How'd you learn about the old...
What?
There it is.
I went to Christian schools K through 12. K through 16, actually.
Yeah, really.
For me, it was also the thing that in school, we did the thing sort of that you described, April, which is like the boys went off with one teacher, the girls went off with another teacher. The two genders, of course, separated into equal gender-specific pods, which would capture, of course, the full range of gender and human sexuality.
Grand Rapids Christian High School actually had pods, like big
no
vacuum-sealed pods.
That is not true.
Use humans as batteries. Yeah.
So the first time we did this was, I think, in 5th grade. And this was pretty basic, like, you're going to start feeling some feelings, and there are some things about your body that you need to know.
You won't know where, you won't know when, but something terrible is going to happen.
Well,
and you leave the room, you're like, wait, what? But what?
No, there was enough specificity there. You know, stuff about how, like, you got a penis, your penis is going to get a little bigger, your testicles are going to drop, you know, shit like that. In talking a little bit in broad strokes, about... the fact that sex is a thing. 8th grade, then we got the full treatment, talking about how, like, the moment that you have sex with somebody, if it's outside the context of marriage, you're irreparably damaged, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. That one.
In the,
Soul ties.
What are soul ties? I actually don't know this.
Yeah,
one.
I'm not sure I know this either.
Oh, well, you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Soul
boy.
ties are that whoever you have sex with, whether married or not, your soul is forever intertwined with their soul.
Like
you
your
will always
immortal
be
soul?
Connected. Yes. Soul ties, which is why you only want to sleep with your spouse because you don't want to be permanently connected. And it's like, so if you have sex before marriage, you are going to be connected to that person on a very deep, intimate level forever.
Right.
And you will
Very
not be able to
Hellraiser.
give your full self to your spouse.
Oh, that's crazy. See, we didn't go quite that far.
Oh, wow. Famously, there is a passage in the Gospels where people are like, hey, Jesus, if a woman's married, her husband died, and his brother does the dutiful thing and marries her, and then, you know, dies, the next brother marries her, dies, the next brother marries her. They say, in heaven, who will she be married to? And Jesus says, no one. Nobody. That's a earth thing.
Classic Jesus pissing off everybody.
It's great.
Yeah.
This pretty much ties together coming of age. You know, I feel like we've all come of age together. It's been a beautiful time. I've experienced joy in my life. I am sad that now my soul is permanently connected to all of you. Because I wish I could have saved that for marriage, but it is what it is.
There's nothing quite like the soul tie of podcasting.
That's even stronger, I think, than
That's
actually.
the new purity culture.
That's right.
Whoever you do a
That's
podcast
right.
with, your soul is tied to them for eternity. Wow, I barely knew you guys, so, you know.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
we're in this forever now.
Yeah,
It's
that's
And so we might as well allow those soul ties to carry us through to this next episode. Episode 163, A Model Child.
Yeah, and it's very important that no one ever learns how I learned about sex.
Oh, did you want to?
No,
Okay.
It's very important that no one ever know how I learned.
Great.
AJ's taking a big sip right now. He's like being really conspicuous about
do you
this.
want to? Do you want to fucking tell your story?
I'm not gonna play
it's
his
fine.
game.
Don't ask me. I don't
I'm
have an
not
amazing
playing-
story or
I'm not
anything.
playing
It's fine.
your game.
It's
I'm
fine.
not playing your game.
Good. So we move on to A Model Child, and we open with Lord Byron.
She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. This poem was written by a British nobleman named Byron. It's one of the most famous descriptions of physical beauty ever written. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that's how they have to look if they want to be beautiful.
And her delivery here has some real Dr. Steve Brule energy, I feel. It's very like, and that was a poem by Dr. Danny Brungus. Yeah.
So we find ourselves talking about, well, we have Melanie Jacobs and her friend, whose name doesn't matter because she appears in like 3 episodes.
Tracy Sketchum, I believe.
Tracy Needlemeyer.
Okay. So, Tracy Sketchum, of course, the side character in the Orange Islands arc of the original Pokemon anime. So,
what a pull!
So Tracy,
Jesus.
so Melody and Tracy in this economy are having a drinking contest.
Yeah,
in Whit's
they're
End.
Yeah.
It's a
Because it's the
slurp
most
off.
boring town in the history of goddamn time. Like, how bored do you have to be to race drinking Coca-Cola? Like, my God.
I was really uncomfortable with the Foley here of the slurp off. Like, they're like, who can slurp harder? And I don't know, there was just something about it that just made me a little uncomfy. I don't know if that's me reading too much into things, but, I think my brain was primed from the previous episode.
Anyway, so these girls see the girl, Monica Winters, this girl that they are all very jealous of, walking by.
There she is again. Huh? Through the window.
Who are you looking at?
Monica Winters. See? There up front. She's wearing that blouse I was telling you about, Tracy.
Wow, no kidding.
Oh, it's a pretty blouse.
Do you know how old she is, Mr. Whitaker?
Monica? Oh, 15 or 16?
She's 11.
You're kidding.
Nope. Doesn't she look great?
She's an attractive girl, but 11? Must be the way she dresses.
I knew nothing about this episode. I remembered this one clip, and I knew that this would be one to listen to today.
Yeah, April, immediate gut check here. Thoughts on Whit's feelings in this moment?
Gross.
Okay.
Who looks at a child and be like, that's an attractive young woman? There's other words. Like, you can just say, like, they're beautiful, or God,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, just like everybody is beautiful, but, she's an attractive young woman. Like, ew. Gross.
His wistful, like,
bro,
must
but also,
be the way she dresses. Just,
yeah. But also even how the relationship between the two girls and him where they're like, don't you think she's pretty?
Yeah.
Ew, what is why are y'all talking about this? How often does this happen?
Yeah.
The girls I can see, I understand the like jealousy. Like you see someone who's really well put together. She gets to wear makeup. She gets to have clothes that you are not allowed to have. And you're just like, oh my God, she's so glamorous. I want to be her.
Right.
Isn't she just the most beautiful creature on earth? I want to do the plot of Single White Female to her. I want to take her identity very slowly and then remove her from the gene pool.
That's actually really funny because that's actually what Tracy does. So the Monica that we see going forward is actually Tracy this whole time. That's why she disappears. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, Monica also disappears. We never see her again after this episode.
Oh, that's a shame. She and her mom dynamic, I think, could have built to something interesting.
I thought it was weird how throughout the episode they kept referring to her not every time, but most of the time as her full name.
Yeah,
they kept
Monica
saying
Winters.
Monica Winters. And every time they say it, it sounded like they were trying to say Monica Lewinsky. So I kept thinking Monica
had that
Lewinsky.
thought too.
Yeah,
they predicted her.
Yeah, it's before that. But I had that exact same thought. I think it's maybe just because her name fits Eleanor Rigby for me. So it's Monica Winters. and so it's very pleasing. Like there's something about that particular like scansion that like really hits the ear well.
And she is also played by Beanie Feldstein, much like Monica Lewinsky.
Fascinating.
No, it's not Beanie Feldstein. It's another nameless child from a church who never did another episode.
That child's name, Ray Liotta.
There we go.
Yes.
Oh, we really are doing it today.
Well, I was always very tall for my age. So anytime we would have like VBS or kids' church, I would either have to wear pants or find like boy shorts to wear because regular girl shorts were like my legs were too long. And so they looked more scandalous. And we're talking about like as young as 10.
Yes, and by boy shorts, you mean literal shorts that
like
boys would wear, not boy shorts.
Yes.
Like
not
cargo shorts.
not like the cute boy shorts, like actual shorts in the boy section.
Awesome.
You were wearing like the gym shorts that I was wearing in 7th grade because I was cool.
Yes. And then I eventually kind of turned into a bit of a, they called it tomboys at the time.
Right.
And it was like, you know what? If they're going to make me, I'm just going to pretend like I love this. So I would start wearing Jinkos. Do y'all remember Jinkos?
Yes. Jinkos are back. Have you seen this? They are back.
They're back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit of a tomboy, so I tried to pretend like I didn't care. Which I kind of want to did purity culture do that to me? I don't know.
Yeah,
but yeah,
interesting.
I grew up in Texas, so like in the summertime, if I was wearing something that had exposed shoulders, I'd have to wear a sweater over it, because boys, men could stumble like, oh, you're becoming a young woman now.
Right. You were fighting every young woman's battle. The young men were fighting a battle of their own.
God forbid we try to like correct men's behavior. No.
Yes, actually, God forbids it.
Okay.
No, I just had to literally sweat throughout Texas summers, dying of heat
summer in
stroke.
Texas. Yeah, that must have been a nightmare.
I'm curious then, like, because what happens next here is, Monica comes into Whit's End to wait for her mom to pick her up, and Whit immediately fucking negs her.
Would you like something to drink while you wait? Water, soda, float?
Nothing, thank you. I'm on a diet.
A diet? At your age?
I wouldn't look right in these clothes otherwise.
Excuse me for saying so, but I think you could stand to gain some weight.
Nope.
Fuck you.
Not cool,
That's going to
Whit.
fix it, Whit. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, also about this specific sort of dynamic.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was always on the skinny side as well.
Okay.
I was tall and skinny, so I was a very lanky child. And almost every adult I feel like that I ran into were like, you need to put some meat on those bones.
Yeah.
They say that to boys too, and it's just so weird to be like a child. Yeah, Josh, you are famously quite thin because you have cystic fibrosis.
That's right, Brian.
Yeah. I also couldn't put on the weight when I was a kid, and I would get told that all the time, and it was like it was very frustrating because like I'm like actively trying to put on weight, and I physically can't.
To hear adults say that shit to you, like your body is wrong, like you need to fix it because the adults are authorities in this matter.
Yeah, and the idea of what their idea of healthy is so narrow because they would, critique the kids that were overweight, critique the kids that were underweight, when really we were probably all just healthy. We just had different body types, but they're no, you must fit this mold. But then they'll tell you like, oh, it's not about looks. While reinforcing the idea that it actually is about looks.
God, yes. And we will definitely get to that a bit more in this episode because that's a really weird place that it ends up landing, right? Where on the one hand, Whit has his ideal type for an 11-year-old, I guess. But also, it's not about your looks.
Also, Whit peddles sugar, so he needs kids to get as much sugar in their bodies as possible.
That's right.
I think Jordan from Brigham Young Money was just talking about this. It's just like Salt Lake or like any place in Utah, they're always just opening some new place that does like boutique cinnamon buns or shit. And it's just like, just start serving liquor. Like people just need to start drinking at some point.
Yes.
There's gotta.
But we do learn here that Monica, the reason she's all dressed up and so on is she's doing a modeling contest for Bart Rathbone.
Did your doctor put you on a diet?
No, my mom thought it'd be a good idea because of the modeling contest.
Contest?
What modeling contest? The Young Miss Odyssey modeling contest.
Sponsored exclusively by Rathbone's Electric Palace and Camera Shoppy. Here you go, girls. Have a look at my flyer.
Thanks, Mr. Rathbone. Look, Mommy.
10 to 12-year-olds only. The contest for the big girls comes later in the year.
So Bart is doing Frank Reynolds' Little Beauties.
Yes.
And he's doing it so he can sell cameras because now S.L. Clemens got sucked into a role of postcard format roll film and the Clemens camera shop is gone. So Bart is moving in.
It's so good. So longtime listeners of Whit's Endless Summer and longtime listeners of Adventures in Odyssey will remember Bart Rathbone, I don't know, how do we describe him?
Last time we said he was Turkish. I think this time I'm going to say he's Circassian. He's some kind of an ethnic. He's from New York. He talks with a shady accent.
Yep.
He's played by Walker Edmiston.
Yes.
And he's just the guy who does the bad things. He does the things that corrupt the culture of Odyssey in any given episode. So this time he's doing child beauty pageants, which are definitely not a big thing in evangelical world at all.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I was baffled by this. They keep calling them beauty contests, but they're pageants, right? Nobody refers to them as beauty contests, right?
That's an old school way of referring to it. But they would be pageants.
Well, I think the reason that they say beauty contest as opposed to beauty pageant is we actually get Whit here distinguishing between the beauty contests that are good and the beauty contests that are bad. He has a specific opinion about this.
A contest like this promotes all the wrong things, as if a person's physical appearance is more important than anything else.
You think beauty contests are wrong?
No, not all of them. Not those that emphasize other qualities.
Immediately backtrack.
Beauty isn't everything.
Isn't it?
So 10-year-olds can do pageants because like a not insignificant portion of the audience of Adventures in Odyssey is involved in the pageant scene.
Right. That's how they square the circle here because you can't say all pageants are wrong for fear of alienating your listener base.
Yeah.
And also Whit specifically, he just really likes the talent portion. Like that's what really gets him going, I guess.
Yeah. Or the
baton twirling is
the Q&A section where they answer questions. That's sort of like that's his cup of tea.
April, did you know girls who were involved in pageantry growing up?
Yes, I did know people in pageants. In grad school, one of my good friends actively did pageants. I was never a fan. I've always been I mean, I guess I supported my friends, but I've always had issues with pageants, even the ones with the Q&A and the talent.
The talent.
So I'm like, no, this is still just a glorified beauty contest.
Right.
And it's weird in this episode, listening to it. I was like, I mean, I agree. I don't think kids should be doing modeling contests. But it was just such extreme because I feel like they don't write nuanced characters. It's like you're either really good or you're really bad. And the way that they portrayed it, this was obviously before like Toddlers and Tiaras and
and how do you think
culture.
What do you think the judgment is on Monica herself?
They definitely paint her out to be bad initially. Which I'm like, this is not her fault. And that's my thing too. Like Whit shouldn't have been telling her, your weight's wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. He should have gone to her parents and been like, hey, I have some concerns for your daughter. Because she's, she can't help what her parents are telling her to do.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All you're going to do is give this kid a fucking complex. And if there's one thing
sin to have a complex, apparently.
That's right, Brian. And if there's one thing we know and love from growing up evangelical, it's all of the fun complexes you develop and have to unpack later on in your life.
Yeah. And I also just want to be very clear. I think it's very healthy for kids to like experiment with how they express themselves. Like, if they wear makeup, if they wear certain types of clothes, like, they should figure that sort of stuff out. But the competition element of all of this is a fucking travesty and a nightmare. And we need to stop doing it. Like,
we didn't have much pageantry in Gallup, New Mexico. The one big thing that we had was like there are tribal pageants. So there's like Miss Navajo Nation, Miss Native New Mexico and stuff. And those are less built around beauty and more are like rigorous tests on like how well you know the language and how to properly butcher a sheep.
That's like a means of preserving the culture, right?
Yeah, like I certainly knew after going to Michigan and going to Calvin, met a lot of people who were involved in pageants growing up.
People probably weren't from West Michigan because the Dutch were a very austere people.
Yeah,
we
not
don't
West
care
Michigan,
for that.
but from Eastern Michigan and Ohio.
Sure.
And of course, the South, it seems to be a lot more prevalent.
Also, of course, people in Ohio, because Ohio is full of fucking perverts. So Whit goes ahead and throws the flyer for the beauty contest in the trash where it belongs.
Also doesn't, as we know from the lore, Whit does not allow flyers at Whit's End anyway.
Right.
He does not allow anyone to advertise
Although
in
he
his
does
business.
make occasional, very rare exceptions. But yes, that is by and large, no flyer policy. Melanie, though, secretly thinks that, this could be kind of fun.
She thinks it's fun. Yeah. Like, who doesn't love getting dressed up and looking great and getting on stage, right? So that's what Jimmy was just doing as Juliet.
Exactly.
Right.
So she goes and talks to her parents. Her parents are not on board.
No.
But Mom, why can't I answer? Don't you think I can win?
It's not a question of whether you can win or not. Your father and I simply don't think it's appropriate for you to enter a modeling contest.
Frankly, I don't think beauty pageants are appropriate for anyone, particularly girls your age. It emphasizes all the wrong things.
It's such a, that phrase, emphasizes all the wrong things. You're talking about her chest.
But they
Dale,
can't. They can't get that specific though. And so the writing won't allow that.
Keeps showing up in these this episode and the next one. The wrong things, all the wrong things. Emphasize these little phrases here.
Yeah, I don't think they explained why it was problematic. And so when you're a kid and you don't get an actual explanation that makes sense to you, then it's just going to make you want to do it more.
Right.
And especially because I think Melanie's parents at one point say, "You belong to us."
Yes.
Right.
So
just like, Jesus.
I own you, motherfucker.
Well, and the episode tells us that their arguments at no point are convincing, right? What ends up getting Melanie to stop wanting to do it is actually getting to know Monica and finding out that she's unhappy.
Right.
I want to point out just one more thing because Bart dangles this prize in front of the girls that if they win the beauty contest, they get a professional portfolio with a photographer from Chicago. It's another one of those times where Bart and Chicago and maybe a strange Dutchman who is in the Midwest.
Oh, for God's sake.
Raring to come back to Odyssey.
Yeah.
He's getting into the modeling business now.
But
Regis Blackard, it's him.
Something that's interesting about that too is how it's always the association between the sort of worldly behavior in the big city. right?
Yes.
The big city that's full of vice and, jazz, things of that nature.
There are no big cities in Ohio, just in Illinois.
Was this also part of your upbringing, April, like the association between big cities and vice?
Not so much, because I grew up in Dallas.
Okay.
So I was in a big city, but we were
Sure.
Texas, so Texas was kind of its own thing. We're like God's promised land, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like Utah. It's like a very specific. Yeah.
Were there strong opinions about like Austin as being like sort of a bastion of sin?
We didn't claim Austin.
Right.
We were too liberal for
Right.
us.
Yeah.
We were like, Texas, God's promised land. Austin is like the Shadowlands and the Lion King. Like,
you must not go there.
Simba.
Yeah.
One other thing I was just thinking about when Whit's explaining why he doesn't some contests are fine if they do other things besides beauty. Like that actually is problematic too, because my biggest issue with pageants, even ones that include talent and include interview and whatever else, is that it's still a people competition. You're not competing based on a specific talent. You're not competing based on a sport or something. It's literally like, who is the better person?
Yes.
And that is grounds to give anyone a complex. Because if you lose, you're like, oh, that person's just a better person than me. Where it's like, if it's basketball, like, they're a better basketball player. I can practice more. How do you practice more at just being a better you? Like a better human.
Yeah. And I think also, not just a better person, but in this case, a better girl or a better woman, like the one who best fits the ideals of femininity or fucking whatever.
And it's so subjective too. It's because it all would depend on who are the judges. And it's like your whole world is dependent on what 3 or 4 people say is better. And that just breeds insecurity.
Right. Well, and perhaps unsurprisingly, Monica hasn't been doing too well as a result of all of the pressure placed on her. Melanie and Tracy go down to a swimming hole. They find Monica down there. She's been crying, but they convince her to go swimming with them. And then all of a sudden she's able to like be a little girl again. And it's presented as this really nice moment. And I thought it was kind of nice, right? It's like, you can just hang out.
The message that they're pushing in this episode and the next episode is like, kids have to just be able to be kids.
Right.
Except for the ones that we're going to keep on retainer as professional actors who are making our show for us. The moment their voice changes, we throw them in the gutter.
Out of here.
Like the last episode has this whole thing with Whit being like, yeah, Jimmy, you just can't do it. Your voice is too fucked up now. We can't help you. And it felt like Phil Lawler was like, arguing with David Griffin in his head and was like, here's why we have to fire you. And here they're like, well, these beauty pageants, though, they're making kids grow up too fast.
Well, the only reason they didn't end up firing him is because there can only be one Jimmy in the no door at any given time. So they could throw another Jimmy down there.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So after the girls go to the swimming hole, Dale goes over to Whit and he tells him to write an op-ed.
Yeah.
Like it's just this very strange thing that is very much like Focus on the Family is telling parents, hey, is there something in your community that's causing a problem? In the same way that they did with objectionable music. They are like, hey, are you a local business owner who has an inordinate amount of power in this town? Go to your newspaper and write an op-ed about the cultural rot that is infecting your city. And you'll be able to take it down. It's such a specific plot line that could only come from Focus on the Family in particular.
Because it also doesn't really advance the plot. I mean, it sort of does, but the bottom line here is that Whit has to write over the course of an afternoon to make it in by the evening edition, something talking about, and I quote, the problems with contests that highlight a person's looks. That is such a strange and specific turn of phrase.
I just thought it was so passive aggressive. They're like, you're not going to go to the guy. I mean, they had their little interaction, but you're not going to actually go to the people that are putting it on or the venue that's putting it on and have a conversation with them. Like, I'm going to write about it in the paper.
Yeah.
It's just so passive aggressive.
Because later on, Bart comes back and is justifiably really pissed off at Whit for not just directly coming to him and talking about it.
Yeah, that scene is really, really tense. I only have the last part of it, but like Bart leverages his status as a business owner who takes out ads, right?
Right.
Well, Mr. Rathbone, if you'd like to write a rebuttal, I'll provide the space.
Hey, I am no writer. I am a businessman, one who advertises, Mr. Jacobs. And if this is what I can expect in your newspaper, I guess I'll just have to withdraw my massive advertising campaign.
And then the gag here is that his advertising campaign was he once took out a line in the classifieds to sell Rodney's mini bike.
Right.
But like, we know the Electric Palace is fucking lousy with sales. Of course they're going to be advertising in the paper.
Right.
It's also a weird thing where it's like, they could, again, if they were interested in exploring any of this, which they're not, they could have made this a whole thing about like the commercial pressures and how commercial pressures can bring to bear cultural change.
Instead, it's just a Sorkin scene where they own him with facts and logic and he runs away.
Right.
Yeah, and it feels more pointed. Like, I know that Whit is against beauty contests, but it seems more like, I just kind of want to fuck over Rathbone. Like,
it's very personal. It's very personal.
Incredibly personal. Also, the title of his article that he writes is a model example of what's wrong with modeling contests.
Horrible headline.
Yeah. Well, that's Dale. He did the headline. That's the editor's
also just
fault.
shows like the privilege too of like, you don't like something that's going on. Oh, you can just write an op-ed and the paper will definitely put it in and give you a voice.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's just these
God King of Odyssey, you know.
Yeah. Well, if you're God King of Odyssey, but also if you are a listener to this radio show where you are probably comfortably middle income in a community that is probably mostly, if not exclusively Christian, it's so interesting, and I agree with you, April, like how they make these assumptions about their audience and how they then propagandize to them as a result of those assumptions.
Yeah, it's fascinating. They never let up. They show that like even when we're doing this little episode that could just be focused in on this girl and should, honestly, because it is focusing on a very real thing that a kid listening to the show might be going through or might have a friend going through. Instead, they have to make it about this other thing about like cultural like will.
Yes. And it probably is for people who have a friend going through it because of the way that they portray this situation, right? Where the girls head over to Monica's house and her mom is there and her mom is very immediately upset at the state of her daughter for going swimming.
Best time I've had.
Monica.
Hi, Mom. I want you to meet...
Look at you. What have you done to yourself?
I went swimming with Melanie and Tracy. Hi. Hello.
You're a mess. Your clothes are soaked.
Yeah, we went...
And your hair. Oh, we spent such a long time on it this morning. It was so beautiful. What's gotten into you?
I went swimming in a pond up by...
I suppose everyone has seen you like this.
No, I don't.
You come in and
think
get
so.
changed right away.
There are some very clear markers that they have here. One, like class. Like this is a big fancy house with the grandfather clock. This is a sort of waspy, rich family.
Yeah, I mean, this is very like Disney villain, you know, like slight transatlantic accent. I'm sort of picturing Cruella de Vil in my head kind of thing.
But with the delivery of the mom from the room. It has a lot of, I got the results of my test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
For sure.
Very black and white. This woman is pure evil. Yeah. Which, like, you obviously don't like her in the story. But I was also thinking, too, like, I feel like, because I think shortly after this, we'll probably talk about it, but they go to the mom and they're like, oh, could we go? They're like, no, you can't even go.
Right.
And I was like, actually, I think what would be the most Christian or Christ-like thing to do would be to go and support your friend who clearly is in crisis and doesn't want to go, but you go to support. And be there for her.
Dale does not want his daughter to go to the beauty pageant because he has put this op-ed in the newspaper against it. So there's that like competing will.
So it's about image. It's like, well, people will see. What would people think?
Yeah, that's really interesting because they don't quite play it that way. We have Monica's mom who is like, oh, I'm sure people have seen you like this. How embarrassing it is to our family. But when Dale does it, it's fine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all about him, right? I think like the thing about these 3 episodes is that all of the male like authority figures make it about them. It's never about the kids because they're possessions. They belong to these parents. And is that a thing that's, I don't know if that's intrinsic to evangelical society, if that was all of y'all's experience too, that it felt like your parents had like an ownership over you as opposed to like your own, like sort of growing up and exploring. But I mean, it is something that comes up so much in Odyssey. It is a question I wanted to put to all of you.
Well, there was even, I don't know if y'all saw this woman who went viral on Facebook a few months ago when Turning Red was released on Disney.
Oh, yeah.
The movie.
Yeah.
She wrote this whole long thing about how we should boycott Turning Red because the movie Turning Red is about a 13-year-old girl who ends up going through puberty.
Right.
And, they openly talk about periods, and like the red panda she turns into is like a metaphor for adolescence and your period. And all these things. But in her Facebook post, she's literally like, this is unacceptable because children belong to the parents, but this movie treats them like they're their own person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, they are their own person. Like she like said it out loud. But like, there's this idea that, and it's probably from James Dobson is part of the reason that it's just an evangelical culture. They're training, like there's parenting conferences where they train parents on how to raise your kids to also be little warriors for God. And it's like you own them until you don't own them. And especially for girls, I know of a lot of talk that was like, you are under your father until you are under your husband.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, especially in like a complementarian environment, which my family was oddly egalitarian, which is the idea that, men and women are equal. But my mom very much fit. Like the way the dynamics of my parents' marriage was very complementarian, even though they weren't. Like my mom served my dad. My dad had the final say. But my dad he was a feminist when it came to me. He was like, you can do whatever you want. But he would tell me to make sure that I had like my career started before I married, because once I got married, if I wasn't already established, then my husband would take over.
Right.
Was just this idea, because that's what so many in the church believed. If you marry a Christian man, they're going to want you to submit to them. And like even in college, I was in debate class and someone voted me most likely to win every argument with their spouse. And like I posted about it on Facebook as a joke. And literally the first comment was from this Theo bro from my old youth group that was like quoted, I don't remember what the verse was, but it's how women should be silent. And he was like, actually, you can't win any arguments against your husband, because as a wife, you should submit. And we're talking about a metaphorical husband. I was like 22, I wasn't married.
That verse about like, I permit no woman to have authority over me or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God.
Yeah. Paul, but they're more like Paulians than Christians.
Yes.
Yeah. Paul had so many complexes. like sometimes you're reading
weird
it and you're
fucking
like,
guy.
This guy had some really personal things going on that he put into
that thorn
these
in
letters.
his side. I want to go back in time and be like, Paul, what's the thorn?
Yeah.
Just between you and me. Are you gay?
Is he gay? Yeah. Is he gay?
Because he's always going on about like, no one should have sex ever. He's like, I guess you should get married if you're going to do it, but like, don't get married even. Like, no one should have sex ever.
So the pageant happens, right? But Monica doesn't show up for the pageant. What's going on? Well,
and her mom is beside herself. She can't find Monica anywhere.
Right.
And of course, Melanie knows where to look, because Monica was crying in the woods.
Right.
So they go to the woods. And not Monica's mom. It's Melanie and Mrs. Jacobs who go to the woods.
Go away, please.
Oh, we can't. Are you all right?
It didn't fit.
What?
I didn't lose enough weight for the contest, and the dress didn't fit. Everything's ruined.
The new dress your mom bought?
It didn't fit. I can't go to the contest. I'll look silly in front of everyone.
Oh, you won't look silly, sweetheart. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding.
But Mom bought the dress special, and I made a mess of everything. I didn't lose enough.
Oh, nobody cares about that, Monica. Your parents just want to know that you're all right. Why don't you come back with us?
All
They'll
right.
never forgive me. It's all a mess.
There's nothing to forgive.
It was just a silly contest anyway.
Take my hand. Come on. We'll all walk back together.
I don't feel very good.
We'll help you. Take your other arm, Melanie. She looks exhausted.
Come on, Monica.
See, Daisy.
But I don't feel good.
Mom!
Oh.
Monica!
Yeah, so Monica passes out, ends up in the hospital because she has been starving herself in order to fit into these clothes for the beauty pageant that her mom put her in.
I thought it was so interesting because this is normally how an Odyssey episode like this wraps up. Like, she's in the woods, she cries, but then the two people come and find her and they're like, okay, well, let's get you in there. And you think that's kind of how it's going to wrap up. And then that discordant chord just hits in the background and she passes out. And it actually goes to a much more intense place than I was anticipating.
Very intense.
Frankly.
Yeah. Very, very intense for a children's show, I felt, especially a Christian children's show. And the way that they resolve this is actually fairly pat. Like Monica's mom comes in and, it's like, well, could she have gotten these ideas? And Melody's mom owns her with facts and logic.
But and then she goes into counseling.
Right.
Like the doctor tells her, like, we like both of you need to go into counseling. And then they even do like an extra scene after
a little
that,
epilogue,
where they're at the swimming hole and she's like, see, I've gained weight. I'm doing much better. Mom's in this is like, compare this to a sort of similar episode where Kurt was dealing with his father's alcoholism.
Right.
And that one's very realistic. It's like, well, you can tell your friend that you'll be there for them, but you can't fix everything. And that one just sort of ends with Kurt fishing and like crying by the lake. This one is like, oh no, we solved it.
Right.
Everything is fine. When this is like, this is a bigger issue, right?
Yeah.
This is eating disorders. This is a parent-child relationship that is really, really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting too, the way that this is presented, I think, as being something that would be external to the experience of any good Christian family. That this is not something that would happen within the listenership, right? The Jacobs family is a stand-in for the listeners. Your kid is Melanie, and you, the parents, are Dale and Ann. And there might be Monica's in your life that you have to help, right? And you can provide help, and maybe you can even fix their problem. But my question is, what if you're an evangelical kid and your parents are imperious and they think that they're being the good parents because they're having you listen to Odyssey, but they're propagating a lot of these really dangerous behaviors? Because let's be real, that's something that happens all the time.
Well, and then if you have questions or if you bring up concerns, especially in a church environment, it's like, honor your father and mother. Honor your father and mother.
Right.
Trust and obey. There's no other way.
No other way to be happy in Jesus, for sure.
God.
And they
I know,
own
AJ, you're getting a peek into like the fucking stuff that's been hard coded into our brains. It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you put that into the mouth of like a horde of the bad guys in like a Disney animated movie, it would sound horrifying.
Yeah, all of these, in Mulan, all of the Huns being like, trust and obey. There is no other way.
Right. And it's sort of the thing that they use a lot against communism, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like, well, this is, you'll turn into like the communistic horde that all you can say is like, think and obey, there is no other way. And yet that's a phrase that's been hard coded into your minds as children.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's
right
terrifying.
there, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, what ends up coming out of this is not the lesson of here's how you can help your friend, which again is what we saw with Kurt and his father's alcoholism.
Yeah.
This is just, anyway, God only cares about what's inside. Beauty isn't really the point. Don't worry about growing up too fast.
Yeah, the message is so sloppy here. Like it's like pageants are bad, but like not all pageants are bad. And also kids shouldn't worry about how they look. But the minute they turn 18, they should absolutely do that. But also even as kids, they should be concerned about how they look because men might take things the wrong way, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it's just like, because the messaging at the core of like the actual Christian message is so unclear, this episode is also just all over the goddamn place.
Yeah.
Also because Monica's mom like had no idea what she was even doing or like going on, and the minute she finds out what is actually happening to her kid, like she's
fixed.
like, she's so sorry, and she goes into therapy. When really,
just don't worry about it. The social workers and the doctors are going to handle it eventually. James Dobson, working at the hospital, is going to be able to counsel you and your child.
At the University of Southern California Children's Medical Center in Pasadena.
Yes.
When really in these cases, it's for the most part, the mom goes, okay, so how can we hide it better next time? Like I'm still going to do the thing, but how do we not get caught next time?
Yeah.
And so Monica is in still a very horrible position, I think. I mean, at the end of the episode, she gains weight and it's all fixed, but like real life Monica would not be that lucky. I don't think.
I agree. It's just kind of all over the place, and it was hard to even point out of like, this is a specific problem or this is a specific good thing, because it was just kind of a nicely wrapped. Although I will say, at least they pushed counseling. Although it was probably biblical counseling, which is not good.
Yeah, call the Focus on the Family hotline.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll put you on their mailing list.
Look, we got some chat rooms at www.jd.com that can really help point you in the right direction.
But yeah, I know you're right. Like counseling oftentimes is not something that's prioritized.
So I was raised Pentecostal, so we didn't need counseling because we had Jesus.
Right.
Anxiety, just got to pray it away.
Yep.
Are you gay? pray that one away too.
Are you gay? No, you're not.
Surprise. Nope.
Though counseling was looked down upon. We judged people if they went to counseling. Like, oh, they just don't have enough faith for them. You know, some people just are too weak to do it on their own and give it to Jesus. They have to go to counseling.
Although it is maybe worth noting here that, it's not Melanie and Melanie's mom who are going into counseling, right? Again, it's the external party. Mm-hmm. They're the ones going into counseling. And I feel like that's
the two characters you will never meet again, never met before.
Right.
Just bleak.
Yeah.
Speaking of bleak, when we come back, we are diving headfirst into what I truly believe is like the worst episode of this show that we've listened to. And that is saying something.
Hope you're excited, listeners. See you in a moment.
This week's episode is brought to you by Austrian physicist Christian Doppler. Dr. Doppler, would you like to say a few words? Oh, we just missed him.
So we're back. And, Adventures in Odyssey, some of these episodes are weirdly edited down. I think most of what we have on our torrent of all the episodes comes from what is available on their app, which is their primary mode of delivery these days.
Right.
But there were some scenes from the adolescence one with Jimmy, actually, that they're just little lines, and then also a couple of scenes with more journal entries that have been cut. Mm-hmm. There's a joke that Donna said she'd go get Ferguson the cat and he'd lick Jimmy's mustache off.
Yeah.
The face I'm making right now is not a pleasant one. I don't love that.
There is a deleted scene from the previous episode that actually shows what goes on at the beauty pageant.
Oh.
And I was able to grab a hold of one of the old tapes and just, digitize it and
I don't trust
grab
this.
it. I don't trust this. It's
Very nice performance, very nice and clean performance. Welcome to our legitimate show of kids. Very, very, very nice. Which one of these talented entertainers, who I am not attracted to at all, will be the winner? I'm not attracted to any of them. None of them. And that's the way it
is. Frank Reynolds from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Less of a danger to children than anyone in Adventures in Odyssey.
That's right, Brian.
Correct.
Speaking of children and dangers to them, in our next episode, we're going to learn about the dangers of dressing too provocatively. This is episode 192. Modesty is the best policy.
Gross.
By our boy, Paul McCusker. And this is actually right after, this is 2 episodes after they brought back the Barclays.
Right.
So Jimmy, his voice changed and everything. The Barclays were not in another episode for a full year.
Oh, wow.
And now here we are a year later, and they are back. They're back, baby.
Yeah.
Broadway is back. Jimmy and George did a 2-parter where they experienced the miracle of Passover, which I think we'll have to get Lev Novak on for that one.
Was that like a Goofy movie style, father-son bonding opportunity there? Or?
Yeah, but it's an imagination station thing where they're in ancient Egypt.
I don't like adults going into the imagination station. Can I just say that? I don't like
that. It feels weird. It's kind of strange, right?
Weird to me.
I bet their knees end up hitting stuff.
It's too small.
Yeah. It's way too small.
Actually, the imagination station does have fully adjustable seats. It's very similar to the mechanism you get in any car. You reach down, you pull the lever. You can even adjust the steering wheel.
And you know what? Here's the best part about the imagination station. Legs coming soon.
Let's go.
Yep.
So modesty is the best policy starts with some pretty good, what I can only describe as Phoenix Wright music.
Yeah. This is a very specific music cue that becomes like a motif throughout this entire episode.
It all started one Friday evening at home when I walked into the kitchen and...
Wait a minute, Tad. It didn't start in the kitchen.
It didn't? Now, Donna, I distinctly remember...
It started when you walked into my room, remember?
A lot of synthesized pan flute in these episodes.
Again, very, very Camelot software, very Golden Sun, Mario Tennis.
Who are they talking to?
That was my question.
Okay, yeah, there is an album. We've had a couple of these episodes earlier in this series, but there is one album. I think it's just 12 episodes. I think it doesn't go beyond the scope of the album, where every single episode is narrated. Usually the narration is Whit, because Whit is writing a series of short stories.
Oh, that's right.
That eventually get made into the movie that's directed by Marty Scoresburg, which is the episode where they make fun of the cartoon. But some of the episodes are narrated by other characters. This is the only one that is narrated by two characters at once. But they are not talking to anyone. They're talking to you. They're talking to me.
Oh, nice.
They're talking to the listeners of the Worst of All Possible Worlds.
So this is I think it's so. I actually think this is a very cool storytelling opportunity. Honestly, I think that this could have been a very cool idea. There's a bit that they play with where, like, they can't decide about what the mom is doing downstairs. What Mary?
Yeah, she's reading a book or she's watching TV.
And there's a very subtle
sound cuts. Yeah,
there's a very subtle sound cue if she's watching TV, and she's like, no, she was reading a book, and the sound of the TV cuts out. And I feel like there could have been more opportunity for that over the course of the episode, but it can't, because, like, fundamentally, Paul McCusker believes there is only one. There's only one opinion that truly matters. There's only one narrator here whose opinion really matters, and that's George's.
It is an interesting thing, though, because, you have the opportunity to play around. It's like the game Call of Juarez, where, like, different the map will change based on the story that is being told.
Yeah, deep cut. Okay, yeah.
Ultimately, McCusker's not happy to go off rails.
Donna.
Dad, don't come in.
What's wrong? I just wanted to...
Go away, please. I don't want you to see me.
I just wanted...
Dad, I'll talk to you in a minute. Downstairs.
All right already. Downstairs. Boy.
And he hashes this out with Mary.
George, what was all the shouting about upstairs?
You tell me. I can't figure out what's going on around here.
What do you mean?
Well, I walked into Donna's room and nearly got my head bit off.
What was she doing?
Getting dressed.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, of course it is.
She's growing up, George. You have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, but I mean, she had a slip-on, honey.
Well, still, she's at that age where she's a little bit shy, you know.
Yeah, I know now.
What this is setting up is like it's an episode where it's like, well, yeah, you're growing up. You have a larger sense of privacy at this point, and George has not, in the same way that he hasn't quite adjusted to Jimmy wanting to see a movie without him. He has not adjusted to the fact that he can't just walk into his children's room at any time in whatever state of undress they're in.
I had not heard the word slip in that context in probably 2 decades. It's like, my gosh, I know,
it's so
slips.
old-timey.
But in the early 90s, it did come back into fashion. I think it was kind of a thing in the 70s before that, slip dresses, right? Just very, very kind of thin, straight line dresses that were fashionable. You could see a lot of celebrities wearing them around like 1992, around the time that this is coming out.
Yeah.
And George is like, she's wearing a slip, whatever. But here's the thing. This is not that kind of episode. George has already had to deal with Donna growing up a little bit in a ski trip episode that we don't need to worry about here, where Donna develops a crush on a ski instructor, et cetera, and it's all told from George's point of view instead of Donna's, because there are no women writing Adventures in Odyssey at this point in time.
Eventually that would change.
Like, we'll get Jimmy's point of view when he has a crush. We will not get Donna's point of view when she has a crush.
No.
Doesn't matter.
It's all about the dad.
Yeah.
It's about the girl dad. So George is then shocked because Donna shows up downstairs and...
Ta-da! Well, what do you think?
Donna?
You don't like it?
Oh, it's lovely, darling. George.
Well, you look wonderful, Donna, but aren't you going to get dressed?
Get dressed? I am dressed.
That slip is your dress?
It's not a slip. This is the dress I'm wearing tonight.
Wrong. That looks like a slip. Doesn't it look like a slip to you, Mary?
Wrong. Well,
it's the latest fashion, Dad. All the girls dress like this now.
Well, not my girl.
But, Dad...
I don't get it. Why did you scream at me upstairs? That's what you had on.
I didn't finish doing my hair. I wanted you to see the whole outfit.
Well, I'd like to see the whole outfit too, Donna. I mean, I see you, but not the outfit. Mary, help me here.
It is how
Mary,
the girls
help
dress
me.
now.
It's interesting that Mary is like, this is fine.
Yeah, I do that delivery of Mary, help me here. That's actually a pretty funny reading. But
wrong.
I think it's a bad reading.
Donna is about to venture out into the woolly and wild, uncharted territory of every young woman's battle.
I was constantly taught that what I wear, which we'll get into later in this episode, but that, there were consequences to what I would wear, not consequences for me specifically, for other people that I had to protect. But yeah, I remember in high school, I would kind of go to the movies, but I would have a change of clothes, like in a bag or something that I would change into. And it wasn't even that like slutty or scandalous or like revealing. It was just,
right.
you know, maybe like a slight crop top or spaghetti strap that was lower cut. Like, I mean, honestly, my rebellious outfits were not even rebellious.
The demonization of spaghetti straps in
I
particular
remember
is
that.
such a pointed thing. I remember going on like World Changers trips and they're like, whatever you pack, don't pack anything with spaghetti straps.
Yeah, there's something about the provocative clavicle, right? We can't be seeing it.
Exposed shoulders.
Yeah. Drives them wild.
I remember too, I couldn't show if my bra strap was showing. That was a huge no-no too. I always had to make sure that was covered.
I don't think anyone has ever been like, oh boy, a bra strap.
You know who has? Fred Stoker, the author of Every Young Man's Battle. Whenever he sees a jogger, fucking forget about it.
But this is, I mean, even if you are scandalized by like the sight of a bra strap, it's something you outgrow when you turn 9 or like 10. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the fact that like these grown men they're getting so horned about the sight of a clavicle. It's like it's mind-boggling to me. And also, I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, so a good episode of this will have George learn a lesson, which is just like, stay the fuck out of your kids' business.
Yeah, which is like your kids are growing up. Like,
fucking deal with it.
Things are changing, and you
got to come to terms with that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I have a feeling that he's not going to learn a lesson.
No,
folks.
in fact, what happens instead is that there's this big back and forth about a jacket, which I guess was an accessory piece to the dress itself, and they end up coming to a compromise where Donna can wear the dress so long as she wears the jacket over it.
Well, that was the mom's idea.
Because he said either you wear a different dress, and Donna says she really didn't have anything else, and he said, well, then you're going to just fucking stay home then.
Right.
And it was also cringy too, just the dynamic of, like, the mom was actually on Donna's side.
Yeah.
And
but her voice, like, doesn't matter.
Right, because the man said no. So they both had to be like, well, how can we make him happy?
Right.
Women just don't understand how much they're sinning most of the time just by being alive.
Right.
Thank God we have men to tell us.
Thank God. Thank God we are here right now to tell you right and wrong, April.
It was very telling. Like, April, you spoke earlier about having to wear the sweater over your shoulders and how it actually perfectly mirrors the beginning of this episode and having to put on the jacket, and then how just horribly uncomfortable poor Donna is when she finally goes to this event.
She's also fucking schwitzing, right? Like, it's too hot. The air conditioning has not been turned up to an appropriate or cooled down to an appropriate temperature. And she is now fighting every young woman's battle, namely the battle of should I take my jacket
climate change.
And that's that one too. Should I take my jacket off and expose my sensual shoulders? And of
here
course
she's hanging out with Jack Davis.
Yep.
He's a gentleman. He actually had disappeared after the Elijah episode that we listened to because the actor's voice changed.
Oh shit, it's that kid.
And he did not come back until I guess they thought, well, we're bringing back Jimmy Barkley, we might as well bring back Jack Davis.
Right.
Sure.
So
he was out making Garfield for so long, you know.
Yeah. So here she is at the party when she is finally choosing to take off her jacket.
There. Well, what do you think?
Wow, that's some dress.
Boing.
Hey, don't be rude. Don't mind him.
Hey, don't be rude.
Well, would you like that Coke now?
Yeah, it's still kind of hot in here.
No kidding.
Jack's a good Christian boy.
Yep.
He's just out there, you know, doing his like full-time pizza delivery job at this point and being a gentleman and keeping people from wolf whistling at Donna.
Right.
I mean, I've had moments where it's like, oh, fine, I'll just do it anyway and just not tell you. And like if having that level of strict parenting makes either kids that become these perfect kids that eventually snap at some point. Or it makes your kids start lying to you.
The behavior will continue regardless. It's just whether you want to be included in that or not.
And Donna goes down the path of, shall we say, obfuscating the truth, you know?
I mean, how much wolf whistling was happening in public in the 90s? Like, I think it leads to a larger point about this show is that, like, they're deeply concerned about the sexualization of these kids, but they're the ones doing the sexualization of these kids. So it's like they're imagining that people are just going to immediately wolf whistle because that's what they hear in their heads, right? And it's just like, well, all men are like freaks like I am, so they all must think that like this is the way things are. And I honestly, April, I can't speak to the experience, I think, as much as you can, but like it just seems like this very cartoon and grotesque version of the universe that like it's like it puts the least amount of faith in people possible.
Well, it's hypersexual because they're so sexually repressed because you're taught that even just sexual thoughts are sin and evil. So you're constantly beating yourself up and white knuckling your faith, like, don't think about that, which is, and if you're so repressed and you're not allowing yourself to actually feel and be a very natural sexual being, which is by treating it casually and normally, because sexuality is a very normal part of the human experience. But when you're repressing it, that's how you'll get so supercharged over a bra strap. That is completely a you problem. Like, I feel like kids, which I didn't grow up in this, but I can imagine kids that grow up in a healthy environment where sexuality is normalized and be like, hey, you know, like, don't be weird and don't sexualize people, but like, it's okay to be attracted and it's okay to have these feelings. I can't imagine that they're losing complete control over an exposed shoulder.
Right. Yeah. And this ties in as well to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago with the Every Young Man's Battle episode, where it's like, Fred, freak that he is, having suppressed all of his like actual impulses because he thinks that all of them are wrong, cannot keep his eyes from popping out of his skull when he sees a jogger. And it's like, you know, if you have this like primal reaction to the mere sight of part of a boob, something is going on in your head and it's not normal. I'm sorry, but it's not. But according to George, it's extremely normal because when Donna gets home, George basically goes straight into the lecture from Every Young Woman's Battle about how men think.
Thought maybe we could talk about what happened earlier.
That's okay. We don't need to.
Yes, we do. See, what you and a lot of girls don't understand is that...
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
The reason I didn't want you to wear that dress is because I'm a man and I know how men or boys think, and well, a dress like that makes them look in the wrong places and think the wrong things.
Forces them.
It's not your fault, honey, but you have to be aware of that. That's why your mother and I tried to teach you to dress modestly.
Gross.
Yeah.
Just
your thoughts, please.
Also, your mother and I, and it's like her mother was fine.
Right. Her mother. Don't drag me into this, George.
Oh, talks like that are so triggering because I lived through those so many times. I was 10 when my dad gave me the first talk of like modesty, and he was like, you know, when you start dating down the road, which I wasn't allowed to date till I was 16. My first date was to see The Passion of the Christ in theaters, by the way.
Oh my God, what?
That's so intense. Little
sidebar there. Yeah, so I'm fine. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I'm good actually. It's really normal.
Okay, but hold on. Was it a thing that were you like actually like actively like watching the movie, or was it like actually romantic? Was there like
no? It was a total buzzkill. You're watching at the time like your Lord and Savior being murdered for the thoughts that you're trying not to have in the theater with your date.
And there's that weird fucked up baby too. Like, it's gonna kill every mood.
It's Voldemort's in that movie. He just like floats by holding a dead child, and it's like.
Yeah, it was not my choice. My dad was literally like, you can go on this date, but you have to go see The Passion of the Christ. And it had just come out.
Wait, no, hold on. No. It was your dad who forced that selection of film as well?
Yes. I got asked out on a date. I was like, yes. And Dad was like, it's got to be Passion of the Christ.
Wow.
He was making sure. I mean, well played. Well played, Dad. No funny business happened at all.
Every time you make out, it's just like the whips digging into Christ's flesh.
Yeah, I can say there was no making out on that date. we were like,
except for one couple in the back who were undeterred. They were just definitely going for it.
They liked it,
like,
actually.
Joke's on you, man. I'm into that shit.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Oh, when I was 10, back to what I was saying.
Yeah.
My dad told me that, April, guys only want one thing, and that is to get into your pants. Yeah. He literally said, it's to get into your pants. I was 10. I didn't even know what that meant. But it was grilled in my head to not only dress modestly to appease the boys so that they don't stumble because their sin was somehow my fault.
Right.
But I had my guard up because I thought any boy or man that I met in my entire life was sexualizing me. And that gives you a complex.
It's not a thing we always want. I mean, I'm just going to say that. It's not a thing we're like constantly thinking about. I mean, I guess some men are, certainly Paul McCusker and Phil Lawler.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
But like, it's really, really gross. And there is one point that I did want to bring up about this particular scene. George is also a little on edge because Jack took Donna home, like he drove her home.
Right.
And he's like, you should have called me. And she says the line was busy, and they both say Jimmy at the same time, and it's just Jimmy. I imagine he's
Jimmy
up in his room,
his phone.
He's calling sex lines. Philip
He's
Seymour
addicted
Hoffman.
to 1-900 numbers.
Yeah. Philip Seymour Hoffman's on the other line going, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," just over and over and over again. And then eventually Adam Sandler shows up and punches him in the face. That's my Punch Drunk Love reference for the episode.
Donna has now learned the danger of being immodest, and here's what ends up happening is that because she fucked up, because she took that jacket off and revealed her sensual shoulders, all of a sudden the way that everybody perceives her begins to change. She starts hearing from other girls. One of them is like, because you showed your shoulders, my boyfriend is going to dump me and want to go out with you instead. That's your fault, bitch. And then there's
And the show is like, yes, actually, it is her fault.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
correct.
Jack is worried about, Donna growing up too fast. That becomes sort of the crux of this conversation, and he invites Whit into this.
Don't you think Donna has grown up a lot, Mr. Whitaker?
Jack?
You have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Donna's becoming a very attractive young lady.
Stop.
No.
You don't have to say that, Mr. Whitaker.
No, you don't.
I'm
Correct.
saying it because it's true.
No,
Stop calling
wrong.
underage girls attractive, weirdo.
Yeah, don't do that, guy.
It's such a fucking crazy conversation to write into the show.
Absolutely.
Like, to be like, this is a normal thing that the best person in the world, John Avery Whitaker, is going to say to like a 14-year-old.
I mean, it just reminded me, this is like not necessarily modesty related, but it kind of is. I went to a private Christian school in high school my senior year. We had uniforms, so it was like, skirt, polo, all the things.
Right.
And apparently you were only allowed to wear one set of earrings. And I have two piercings in each ear. And the assistant principal, who I didn't think was really that creepy until he was, came up to me and I didn't sidled me. I didn't see him. And he kind of rubbed my ear and leaned down and whispered. He's like, one set. And I was like, what? It was so creepy. I was like, what? He goes,
Jesus.
you can only have one set of earrings.
That is
okay.
Shit.
And for Donna, who again is seeking to continue to gain attention, which is unacceptable, by the way. Women can't do that. She goes shopping. Women be doing that, obviously. Looking for basically something. She really wants to tart it up. She's really like, hell yeah, boys, notice me. And there's a really interesting little, and I think you clipped it, Brian, where she talks about how she wants to feel, like how she's shopping for clothes because she wants to feel a certain way.
I guess I was caught up in the idea of being an adult, of looking really cool and stylish and having people treat me differently than they did before. I always thought I was plain and boring, but I started to feel accepted.
That comes from her narration, of course. It's not her, like her sitting there and talking with Jack when she's buying the dress. But there's something about it that makes her feel more adult, which I think translates more to she feels in control of herself.
Right.
She feels respected.
Yeah.
And just like her own person.
Yeah, people are talking to her. She doesn't even say that anybody's being creepy to her. Of course, that one guy whistled. She's just like, she feels more like herself.
Yeah.
And there is something to that when you finally start to discover that you can wear clothes that make you look and feel nice, which I certainly didn't do until I was in my 20s. And then I was like, oh, hey, I can actually be hot, Brian.
Yeah, for me, it was the moment that I switched from wide, baggy, like little boy jeans to like slim cut jeans, I was like, oh, wow. Like, I like the way this looks and feels on my body.
Yeah.
But women, especially young women, aren't allowed to do that. Right, April?
Oh, no. No. We are not our own people.
There we go.
How can you be a proper woman if you don't have a man to tell you what to do? And also it just kind of shows that they're equating being an adult with being your own person because they don't treat underage people and children like their own people.
And Donna is not allowed to date. It's like, wow, the Barclays are more unusual than you are led to believe. It's like only G-rated movies, no dating.
Yeah, and there's something too to like, this is such an interesting point in the episode for me because if they had just pulled on that thread a little bit more, they could have gotten somewhere interesting, and they deliberately choose to not do that.
The show thinks that's inherently a terrible thing because you can't have thoughts before you turn 18.
To the point where they cannot even tell the story from her perspective.
Right.
She has to share the perspective with her dad.
Yeah.
And even like when we're just having scenes with Donna, it seems almost like it's more focused on Jack a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Jack, who is modeling the way I guess a good Christian boy is supposed to behave, which actually becomes very controlling of her behavior by the end.
Yeah, because that's what happens next is like there's more Phoenix Wright music. Donna heads to school in her new outfit. Things are great, but then Brad, who is the lecherous, again, we heard about him earlier, don't fucking show your shoulders because my boyfriend is going to dump me guy.
Yeah.
His name is Brad Kennedy. Never trust a Kennedy is what the show is espousing.
Brad doesn't show up. Instead, the girlfriend of Brad shows up and she's like, you're trying to steal my girlfriend.
Right, steal my man's.
Hi, Mr. Whitaker, and leaves.
But Jack basically at this point then, along with Whit, once again try to help Donna understand that because she's dressing the way that she is, all the guys think she's a total slut.
Well, and also she keeps saying several times, like, all the other kids dress this way.
Yeah.
How come all the other Brads aren't breaking up for all the other girls that are dressing the exact same way?
Right. Assuming she's a reliable narrator here, which I think she is. But here's the thing, right? The reason, and we hear this basically from Jack, is that Donna's not like the other girls.
Dating Christian guys or just having Christian guy friends, like those types of Christian guy friends was just so exhausting. I had a dude that like went out of his way to tell me that it was a red flag that I played Halo because ladies shouldn't play violent games.
Oh.
And that like a true man of God wouldn't want a woman that plays Halo.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I cannot spend my life with a woman who has evolved her combat. The absurdity here is that like Jack has a job. They even kind of lampshade his not being on the show for like 3 years by saying, oh yeah, well, I've just been so busy with this pizza delivery job. Right. Robin Jacobs got a job in another episode and became a full-blown business owner with like union troubles. Yeah.
Tycoon,
This is fine. This does not make kids grow up too fast.
Yeah.
But wearing a dress makes you grow up too fast.
Right.
And we can't have that. We have to preserve our childhood.
Well, it's okay for men, boys, to grow up faster because they're going to be heads of households. They need to have that training. But girls, just sit there and look pretty.
But like even Connie has a job. It doesn't pay her anything, but she has a job at Whit's End.
Oh, that's like mega church volunteers.
Absolutely.
Or in ministry in general. You don't need to get paid because your treasure is going to be in heaven.
Right.
And if you ask for money, you're being selfish or you're not really in the word enough. Like this is clearly a you problem. If you're feeling burnout from this free labor that you're giving me, that's because, Satan's probably leading you astray and you're giving into your flesh and all these things.
Jack's pursuit of like getting a job, it ultimately leads towards like perpetuating the capitalist machine, right? Like that's why that's okay because ultimately it will make us more money. But all this women dressing the way they want to thing, that's just going to lead us to have bad thoughts. Like it doesn't benefit us in any way.
Yeah.
Yes. And this was something actually that April, when I listened to one of the podcast episodes, you told a story about how like at a Christian church camp, you had like an exercise where all of the girls had to like hold pillows.
So we didn't hold pillows. It was like the person giving the example did it. What they had us do is they had us all stand up And we would take turns, like I would turn my back to whoever was sitting next to me. And she would then hug me from behind. And since my back was flat, I could feel her chest on me. And then we would turn around and then I would do the same thing to her. I would hug her from behind. So like my boobs were touching her back. And they're like, that's what guys feel whenever you give them a frontal hug. They're thinking about your boobs. Yeah, we all, that's a true exercise that we went through. And I remember being traumatized because you could really feel it on your back because I just never thought about it before. I was like, oh gosh, I'm thinking of my boobs. And then suddenly I feel guilty for hugging my guy friends, even though it was innocent and I was a child. I'm like, oh, I've been causing them to stumble.
Right. And it's not like, oh, watch out. Some of these guys can be like real perverts and like you got to make sure that like you can protect yourself in some way. It's just you are hurting them.
Mm-hmm. It's like even the most godly young man can fall at the touch of your breast.
because like if we're being honest, like where's my hug guys are a real thing. And that's an important thing to be aware of. But again, the onus is never on the guys for attempting to get hugs under false pretenses.
That's why they implemented the side hug. The side hug was specifically so that guys would not be touching boobs.
Right. So you kiss dating goodbye, you kiss hugging goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's just sort of a shoulder check after a while.
I'm still like awkward. My spouse actually pointed this out to me. When I hug people, like I bend.
Oh, you leave a little room for Jesus in the chest area?
Yes. Like it's a habit that I still ingrained that I didn't realize I was even doing. So now I'm trying to be more like, actually give hugs. But I remember Beecher's my spouse. They were telling me that their parents were like, she gives awful hugs.
Awesome.
It's like, what? Why?
Thanks, evangelicalism.
On the flip side, you did effectively, I imagine, find a way to protect yourself from where's my hug guys. So there is a silver lining, I suppose.
Just totally ruined your hug game, though. Like,
my hug game. I still get self-conscious if I come home and I see my bra strap was showing. I'm like, oh God, what have I done?
That is one. Like, it's seriously something I never even think about. Like someone having their bra strap showing has never registered with me in any way. Sometimes it just happens with what you're wearing. What are you going to do?
It's literally a piece of cloth.
It's like seeing part of someone's sock. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if a young evangelical who's very sexually repressed sees a bra strap, then they're suddenly thinking about a bra. Then they're thinking about breasts. Then they're thinking about, this is a woman who has a vagina and I've got something I'd like to stick in there.
It's a slippery slope.
And I think to be fair, like, again, if we're talking about adolescence, you are a raging bag of hormones. So there is an extent to which a guy who is, I guess, straight or, whatever.
It doesn't matter at that age sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, it is true that when there are hormones raging through you, almost anything can set you off and will set you off. But that's not exclusive to boys. That's not like the fact that happens doesn't mean that every moment is going to have to necessarily be that.
Yeah.
And you only develop a complex, feel like it's unnatural, and then end up acting out in weird ways if you are told that that's a problem, which it's not. It just is what it is.
Right. And it's a thing you grow out of eventually and not something you harp on as a 30-something-year-old man writing an episode of a children's show about it.
Exactly.
So we get to this point. We get to this incredible point in the show. George Barkley just goes to Whit's End for some reason. There's not really any reason. He's just like, hey, I'm walking into Whit's End now. Hi, Whit. Hi, Donna.
Right. He wants a Wad Fam Chalk Sod, I think. Yeah.
So he sees Donna in the new dress that she bought that's more revealing than the previous one.
Hi, Whit. I was just passing by and... Donna, hi. I didn't know whether you'd... Donna, is that a new outfit?
Yeah, Dad.
Please cover yourself up and come home with me.
George, before you...
It's all right, Whit. It's only a domestic incident. Let's go, Donna.
Fucking terrifying.
Coming, Dad.
It's so dark.
It's like he found her fucking killing a cat. Like,
like a domestic incident is such a pointed and weird phrase. Like the first thing my mind goes to is just like he's gonna beat the shit out of this kid. Like,
he's gonna dare to discipline her.
Yeah. And Whit would approve, obviously.
Yeah.
And it should be noted, too, that Donna tells Whit everything that's happening. And she has this quote that chilled me to the bone, which is, "I don't know why I told him. Probably for the same reason we always tell him things, because we trust him."
It's because it's too dangerous to talk to her father about it.
Yeah.
She can't express those feelings with him at all. She only, because that's again, Paul McCusker like accidentally writes something very real in there, because it's too fraught to broach the issue at all. You are going to have to go to someone else, or go to no one else,
or just push it down, right? It's the perfectionist you were talking about, April, earlier, that just pushes down till they snap, right? And she at least has this outlet of this creepy old guy who runs a soda shop, but like, how many people don't have anything like that and just have to hide it and lie to their parents? It's like,
I know. Just think of like how much more empowering it would have been if her dad came in, saw her in that, was like, "Wow, you look really beautiful."
Yeah.
And just was chill about it and was like, "Hey, if any guys have problem, that is their fault.
Yeah.
You
or
can't
even
control their minds. They're the ones being creeps."
Exactly. And it's like, or even like if he had walked in on the Shannon argument just before that, and he saw the abuse that his daughter was getting and stood up for her and said,
that would be good writing.
Yeah, like, screw you. And it's just like, I didn't know you would get it from all sides. You don't need to be getting this from me too.
Right.
You should wear what makes you happy is the lesson we should learn in this episode.
Because right before George shows up, Shannon is fucking haranguing Donna. Right?
Yeah.
She's like, "By dressing like this, you are ruining everything for everyone. You stole my mans. How fucking dare you," basically. Yeah. And she doesn't deserve any of this.
Of course, she's literally just wearing clothes. It's fabric. Like, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah. I wish it were a Wendy's, honestly.
Yeah, so of course, Donna gets chewed out. She gets home. She tries to explain like the feeling, right?
Even if you didn't agree with us, I thought you'd at least give us the chance to talk it through with you.
I know,
fuck
Dad.
you.
I should have. But for once I felt like I was my own person. Though that's kind of dumb since I dress like everybody else.
No, it's not.
Yeah, Donna's actually stupid, and it's good that she notes that she's stupid and she calls herself stupid. That's what you have to do in this moment.
Yeah, that's
like,
really what we call
filth. This becomes such absolute filth.
And all the goodwill that I had built up for George Barkley up until this point is just cast to the fucking wind.
And then Jack shows up again.
This part made me so mad.
Oh, yeah.
What, did he bring her something that she... I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you left something behind.
Yeah, you left something.
Yeah.
I was on my way. And they're like, "You weren't on your way. This is on the other side of town."
Right.
And
yeah.
he's like, "Oh, no.
Right.
Well, I was on my way because I'm going to the mall. And I thought Donna might want to go with me." And they're both like, "Why? That seems random." And they're like, "Oh, well, I thought you might have something to return." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, my dress." Like, if I were Donna, it would have been on site. He's like, like, who on earth do you think you are, Jack?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to return this shirt, I'll return it. But he like comes in like this knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
And of course
right.
the dad's like, "Oh, what a great idea." I'm pretty sure they're like he's like shipping them.
George is like about to ground her. He's not like, she's not going to be allowed to go to the mall. But then Jack is like, "Don't worry. I will keep her under control.
Yes.
I will make sure she does what you and I want her to do, George."
Oh,
Yeah.
so gross.
And then they bond over how fuckable Donna is.
Yeah, let's play the clip, please, Brian.
I guess you weren't real happy with Donna's outfit.
Not really. Tell me, Jack, honestly, what did you think of it?
Honestly?
Uh-huh.
Well, I like it a lot, but
For all the wrong reasons. That's what I thought. Come on.
Ew.
The idea of like my dad and one of my guy friends talking about like, "You were looking at her breasts, right?" Like,
Oh,
yeah.
my God.
Like, oh, kill me now.
You want to fuck my daughter? Yeah, me
she
too.
She gets her breast from her mother. It's so gross and awful.
But like, this is fine. Like, in this world, like this is fine.
This is
People
how
see
men
this as
talk.
just like a totally fine thing. This is the respectful way, right? They don't say anything specific. It's just like, oh, it reminds me of one of those joggers that makes me crash my truck twice every week.
And this is ultimately, I mean, I don't know if this is too tenuous of a line to draw, but I think it's relevant. right after the fucking Grab Her by the Pussy tape came out, everybody was like, well, surely this will be the end of it. There's no way that evangelical Christians can support this man after saying such crude things on record. And it's like,
it didn't move the needle even one point.
No.
Like, it didn't stop anybody.
No.
If anything, they just doubled down like, oh, well, everyone can be redeemed except Hillary.
Yeah.
She
Right,
can't.
right,
But Donald
right.
Trump can.
Donald Trump, he's just like me for real.
Was a baby Christian.
I mean, that was the whole thing. And it's just like, this is widely like assumed to be acceptable behavior clearly in this world, and it's just so gross.
They're sexualizing her. Like
Yeah.
she's doing
Yes.
nothing. She is merely existing. She dares to exist as a female, and these Christian men in her life are sexualizing her and making it a her problem.
Yes. And they make a point of saying it's like she is not trying to tempt anyone. She's not dressing this way because she thinks it's sexy. Her mom doesn't think it's a sexual thing. They're just women who have no idea how sinful they really are.
Right.
The Jezebel spirit.
And all it is just a couple of fucking dresses that people see every day in the Sears catalog anyway. It's not going to be the end of the world. And when young women and teenage girls and even younger are sexualized, it doesn't fucking matter what they wear at any time.
Oh, and but it even like goes into like marriage and adulthood. If you grow up in this culture, I was in a small group, and it was like for a young married small group. So it was people who were like more newlyweds. And then we split off one time and we did like a girls brunch for the wives. And one girl was so distraught, and she was like had tears in her eyes and was saying how she can't go to the mall with her husband because every time they walk by Victoria's Secret, she just knows that he wants them more than her.
Oh, you're telling me that these complexes don't just disappear the moment you get fucking married?
Yeah, I'm talking like real tears. This woman thought that her husband was going to leave her for a Victoria's Secret model, and like they weren't even going in the store. They were just walking by and seeing the pictures in the windows, and she was like, I just don't even understand how that's legal.
The logistics of dating a Victoria's Secret model, like the amount of things that would have to happen for him to leave her.
I could date a Victoria's Secret model quite easily.
Well, good news, Josh. There's one right here. Hey!
It's the same guy from before. Well, that's the other thing is like, what, women don't have desire? Women are never attracted to people? Like,
No, we don't. That's not normal.
Yeah,
women's pleasure, what is that?
Wait for soone to pick you. Like,
well,
that's it.
I've been told, and we learned about this when we talked about every whatever's battle. Is that women are only about 10% visual and 90% emotional. These are actual statistics from the book. Now, where did these stats come from?
Specifically, like it's all sound. It's all sound. Women are aroused by things they hear, apparently.
Huh.
And not at all by things that they see.
Did you not know this?
Yeah.
How did you not know this? You're a woman.
It's in the Bible.
Wow. I've been doing it all wrong.
It's all right.
You don't even have to pluck your eye out.
You go into a cave, you hear an echo, and your brain just like explodes. It's like
April, God has put a spirit of forgiveness on me to let you know that He forgives you.
But like 90% of what?
You're welcome.
Like of what? Like 10% of what?
Of the brain,
Of the brain. Okay.
That just reminds me too, like I heard so many cases for why women shouldn't be president because they're too emotional, but men can and literally cannot control themselves at the sight of a shoulder.
Or again,
exactly.
not to be too pat, but noted non-emotional Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
Lord.
I mean, I can speak to that experience because I'm also a man, just like Donald Trump. We are the same guy, and I certainly have never had any emotional problems.
Right. Me either.
Oh God, Brian, we can't lose you. I'm running out of names that rhyme with your name to replace you with.
I'm normal. I'm good. I've never had emotions. The only thing that I am driven by is my vices, which are purely visual in nature.
Yeah.
I am every man, and I am fighting a battle.
It's all in me.
After Jack and George bond over wanting to fuck Donna, Jimmy shows up. This is a weird little like tag that they throw on the end of the episode.
Even boys can do bad things.
That's right, Brian.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Jimmy.
Can I borrow a couple $?
I guess so. Why? What's the rush?
I'm going downtown with a bunch of the guys. We're gonna get our ears pierced.
What?
Yeah, it's cool.
Wrong.
So Jimmy's gonna go fagonate his ear Jesus. And George is like, no good heterosexual son of mine.
Dad, I need to go to the hospital. I've been masturbating for 4 days straight, and I need a doctor.
George leans into Jimmy's ear and just says, no earrings.
Oh, yeah.
No sex.
No sex.
So Phoenix Wright music plays us out here, and that's the end of this episode.
Yeah.
And April, to what extent does this reflect stuff that you grew up with, Christian purity culture at large, etc.?
Yeah, so I think it fits the narrative perfectly. There was always a double standard between me and my brothers. I was the oldest, so it was probably partly because they're just parents are generally more strict on their oldest child.
Sure.
But yeah, like my parents had very strict dating rules on me, did not have those strict dating rules on my brothers. And I also noticed something too, that like there was a lot of freedom for my brothers to wear whatever they wanted and do what they wanted to do, with the exception of doing anything that resembled femininity. Like if if they wanted to, like one of my brothers is actually gay, but didn't come out till adulthood after my dad had passed away. But like growing up, he really liked, like playing dress up with me or wearing a purse. And like I was cool with it. My mom was cool with it. My dad got so mad. Anytime he would see my brother like wearing my play dress up heels, or like if he ran too femininely, like it was just this. Like femininity was bad. It was okay for women, but women just weren't as good as men.
Yeah.
But men should never be feminine.
God just made you lesser, but men, you're making a choice to be incomplete.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, you can't perform femininity too strongly as a woman before you get married, or you become a stumbling block for your brothers in Christ.
Yeah, there's really no way to live.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just constant red tape. It's like, so I guess I should just wear a trash bag until I find a husband. But how am I going to find a husband? Because I'm just wearing a trash bag and I have no personality. Because like they would even take modesty to an extreme sometimes, of like, sometimes modesty is not even just what you wear, but how you act. And if you are, like drawing too much attention to yourself or smiling too much, like that can make a guy think that you like them. And then you're like triggering them or leading them on. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't live. I cannot live.
What's interesting is this episode and the previous episode about the child beauty pageants, they use the same verse. They both draw, because there are no verses in the Bible about growing up too fast. So, in fact, every young man's battle makes the case that like you have sexual feelings when you're a teenager because you were actually supposed to be fully adult by the time you were 16. Right. This is not the line of argumentation here in Adventures in Odyssey. But they use the verse. It's about Samuel when he's being, brought up by like the temple, and how he's supposed to dress sort of plainly, but he is God's chosen. Because people look on the outside, but God sees what is in the heart. In the child beauty pageant episode, the message there is, it does not matter how you look. It does not matter what people think of you.
Right.
What matters is how pure and good your heart is. Right. The message of this episode is that God cares about how you look. Right. It matters what people think of you because of how you dress. Right. And both of these are aimed at girls. Like both of these episodes are about like, this is how it is for girls, for teenage girls, for young women, for adult women. Across the board, you have to live pure of heart. It does not matter how you look, but it also 100% matters how you look.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing with I feel like even a lot of evangelical beliefs are just create cognitive dissonance by default, because there's this idea of like, oh, God has so much grace for you. It doesn't matter what you do. You can do the worst thing in the world and God still loves you and will still save you. And then on the flip side, it's like, but don't do anything bad ever because you might just go to hell.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, which one is it?
Yeah, because surprise, God actually hates you. He loves you, but he also kind of hates you.
It's like, even if you're a murderer, you can go to heaven.
Oh, all the Jeffrey Dahmer posts. Yeah. Have y'all seen those by Christians celebrating him being in heaven?
Yep.
Right.
And Ted Bundy, which was also the same kind of thing. Both of them had the same thing. It's just like, but don't be gay, though. Dahmer gets the exception because he killed gay people, and that's a good thing, actually, I guess. I don't know. Like any kind of mild sexual thing that is untoward to them. No, that's hell. That's just straight
eating
to hell.
people. That's fine. We can look past that.
For more insights about purity culture and the strange doublethink of evangelical Christianity, April, you got a great podcast. Why don't you tell us about it again before we close out here?
Sure. I co-host Evangelicalish, and we do a lot of different topical stuff. We've talked about purity culture several times, and it comes up. We also talk about a lot of current events. And yeah, we do that on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. You can just search Evangelicalish. And if you want to actually know more specifically about my story and my spouse's, because my spouse recently came out as non-binary within the last year. But I mean, we've known about gender dysphoria for a long time. We just didn't know about it in evangelical circles. We did like a very, it's like 13 episodes is the whole thing, but we tell our whole story of going from where I try to cast the demon out of them, quite literally, to accepting them now. And it's we talk a lot about purity culture because it had a big effect on our marriage.
Also on YouTube?
That's just podcast. So it's called the podcast. Yeah, it's just called the Non-Binary Marriage Podcast.
So we will put links to that in the episode notes. Go down there, click on those podcasts, listen to those great shows. If you want to hear more of what we've got here at Worst of All Possible Worlds, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/worstofall. $5 a month gets you access to a couple bonus episodes. And if you pay $10 a month, you get access to one more. How exciting is that?
And just to close out here, I thought we'd do something a little bit different from our sort of normal closing monologue. April, yes. I know that you grew up in sort of this culture and having to go against sort of these modesty battles. So I was wondering if you could actually close us out here with a message for any evangelicals, women who are like dealing with this sort of thing.
Sure. You are your own person. There's nothing wrong with your body. Your body itself is not sin. And my biggest piece of advice for people recovering from purity culture, especially when it comes to like sex, because there's a lot of shame around sex, is to get a vibrator.
Great. Yeah.
Changed my life.
Get a vibrator.
Get a vibrator. I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And I'm the worst of all possible Joshes. See you next week.